Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and today we are live atop the BetMGM Sports Lounge here at Bridgestone Arena, and there is a reason that we are here at Bridgestone Arena today. That is because Barry Trotz, Predators general manager, will meet with the media tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Excuse me, I said tomorrow. Today. I've lost my mind, I guess. I don't know. Today at 3 o'clock, Barry Trotz will meet with the media. We will have that live. Then Barry Trotz will meet with us approximately at 3:40 today. And I've got questions as far as the Predators are concerned as they head into the draft on Friday night. The chairman of the board, Mr. David Reed, is here today. Hello, Mr. David Reed.
Good afternoon, Jared.
By the way, I would say this. I really do enjoy doing the show up here at the top of BetMGM Sports Lounge. I actually think it is got the TVs, everything. It's a nice little setup. Now, I want to start on this. And Adam Vingan asked me as we were kind of wrapping up the midday show today, he said, what is the one thing that you want out of Barry Trotz? And I've said this for years and years and years, that when it comes to a press conference, when it comes to an interview, when it comes to asking somebody something, the only thing that you can really do is ask the question. And then they can say whatever they want to say. And a lot of times people don't want to tell the truth, or there's gobbledygook, or there's all kinds of stuff that comes out of their mouth. And with Barry Trotz, we've been pretty good over the years at kind of getting to the truth. And I think today, the one thing that matters to me, because they're not going to tell us who they're going to draft. They're not going to tell us, oh, yeah, we're trying to shop Marchessault because we think he's a bad guy or anything like that. What they're going to tell us, what I hope they tell us, are about the expectations for the team. The expectations in the short term, the expectations in the long term. But what I need to know, and what I am looking forward to him discussing, is which takes priority. The short-term results of the hockey club or the long-term results of the hockey club. I think Barry Trotz needs to set expectations for this upcoming season and expectations for whatever the plan may be surrounding the guys today when he meets with the media and when he meets with us. And I know they want to be good this year, and they want to be good in the future. So does everybody. No coach and no GM ever gets out there and says, boys, we're going to stink this year. But Barry Trotz is more honest than most. If you remember, a couple of years ago, his first year, he came on the show and said to the fans, hang with us because it might be a tough year. And then it actually ended up being a fun year. It ended up being a decent year. It ended up being a good year. They made the playoffs. So I know they're going to say we want to be good short term. They're going to say we want to be good long term. But the truth is, one has to take priority over the other. It's just, I hate to say it, it's the only reality that exists. One is more important than the other. And so the focus has to be the 2025-2026 Predators or the 2027-2028 Predators. The team 3 years from now or the team today. One of them has to be the main focus. And the reality of which matters more is really the decision that's going to be made by Bill Haslam. Because the owner is the one who decides what the priority is. And while, again, what I would do if I owned the team might be different than what you would do if you own the team, the only one whose opinion matters on what the priority should be is Bill Haslam. Has Bill Haslam told Barry Trotz, hey, we want to win this year or else you're out? Because that would change how a GM would approach the offseason. Now, here's what would happen if I owned the team. And I think I've been abundantly clear with this, but in case you've missed it or in case you didn't get the clarity out of this, let me just roll with it. If I owned this team, my focus would be on the 2028 playoffs. That doesn't mean that I don't want to make the playoffs in 2026 or 2027, but it means that 2028 would be the focus. So, for instance, if I own the team and I say 2028 playoffs, and Barry Trotz thinks that Tanner Mullendijk would be best served by going to Milwaukee and playing top minutes on the top pair in the AHL this season, instead of being stuck on the second or the third pair here, well, that's his call. Good luck, because again, I'm trying to do what's in the best interest of Tanner Mullendijk for 2028. If you draft James Higgins with the 5th overall pick on Friday, and you think he should go back to college and play on the top line at BC next to Teddy Stiga as part of his development, you think Joakim Kimmel needs a 4th year in Milwaukee, again, fine, send him down. But if the 2028 Predators is the focus, then I don't need to trade draft picks for Eric Holla. Not that I care about the Holla trade because it was just a 4th round pick. Who cares? But again, what I'm going to use the resources allotted to me is going to be determined by when I want to win or when I need to win. For instance, cap space. The Predators don't have a ton of it, but they have some of it. So if I'm not worried about competing in 2026, then I can use that cap space next year to maybe take on a bad contract or two and waive somebody or whatever it may be, just to get the assets I want in return. But some people, some owners are impatient and they want to win now. I don't know Bill Haslam. I have a lot of respect for Bill Haslam. I thought he did a solid job as the governor. Again, not to get into the minutia of politics, but the fact that everybody wasn't complaining about him all the time when he was governor probably means he did a decent job. And at the same time, in the year that he's been the chairman, we haven't really seen him do or say anything one way or another, which is the opposite of his brother in Cleveland. But again, his brother is still his brother in Cleveland, and his brother is impatient. And we've seen this with owners. The San Diego Padres a couple years ago went all in, and they traded for Juan Soto. And the reason they did that was because, unbeknownst to everybody, the owner had cancer. So they were going to take a swing at it no matter what. Well, if the owner is impatient and he wants to win now, well, that's going to change how the general manager approaches doing the job. For instance, there's no talk about using the 5th pick on a player who may go back to college. I mean, if I'm using the 5th pick and I have to win now, I'm going to take a guy who I can stick on the second line of the Nashville Predators on opening night in October. I saw a report from Greg Wyshynski at ESPN who said the Islanders want to tear their team down, and they apparently want to get back into the top 5 of the draft in order to get both Matthew Schaefer and James Higgins. Well, if I have to win now because the owner comes to me and says, win now or you're fired, well, now let's start talking about Matthew Barzal and Noah Dobson and those kind of guys, because that would make the 2025-2026 Nashville Predators much, much better. So last year, they wanted to make the 24-25 Predators better and give themselves a shot to compete, but they also were focused on not blocking spots for the younger guys, with the exception of the goalie, which blew up in their face. And I'm not going to say that I don't care which direction the Predators go in, because, again, I have said I am more about the 2028 Predators, and I would prefer that Barry Trotz make it clear to everybody that that is the direction that they're going in. Instead of last year when the team got off to this bad start and Trotz was like, hey, if we don't start playing better by Christmas, I'm going to go ahead and start with the rebuild. And people kept saying, well, what the hell does he mean by that? He just signed Steven Stamkos and Brady Shea and Jonathan Marchessault. What's he talking about, a rebuild? So let's make it clear now which direction the Predators are going in. And I've told you which direction I'd go in. But at the same time, I recognize that I don't own this team, and I'm not the GM. So it is their choice, not mine. And I will ask Barry Trotz, okay, you have to prioritize one or the other. Which one is the priority? And I just think the time is right to lay out the expectations to the fans. And no talking out of both sides of your mouth. No, well, we want to be competitive this year, but we're really thinking about the future. I believe the fans deserve to know where the team's priorities lie. Just to make it more simplistic, the question is, do they lie with the 2026 playoffs, or do they lie with the 2028 or 2029 playoffs? That's the question. And today, I'd like an answer, and I'd like for it to be clear. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. That's how we're starting today, 615-737-1025. And I will say, I think last year, given the signings and then the way things started and the fact that they didn't fire the coach and the fact that Barry in the middle of the year was talking about going forward with a rebuild plan and about bringing up young guys, and they did with LaRue and Svechkov and those kind of players, did feel like some talking out of both sides of the mouth. And all I am asking for is that you make it clear. That's it. You make it clear to me. Instead of giving me we're going to try to win this year. I know you're going to try to win this year. Every time you go on the ice, you're going to try to win. I'm not doubting that. But at the same time, I need to know what the priority is. I need to know. And it is the job of the general manager or the owner, if the owner wants to be the person to do it, it is the job of the organization to set those expectations for the fans. That's what I want to know today. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We will get to your phones and your texts today throughout. Again, Barry Trotz press conference at 3 o'clock. And there was a move made today with the Predators, and I got to say, it made something very clear to me. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company live from Bridgestone Arena, the BetMGM Sports Lounge, where Barry Trotz will join us about 3:40 today. It's Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
Barry, just following on Andrew, I know had a good first year, but given the results from this past season and the personnel on the roster, what sort of gives you the confidence to say he is a good young coach, and maybe if you could expand on what he needs to add to his tool belt.
Well, I think that's a good question, actually, John. Well, I think number one is he's able to, he has the experience at every level. I mean, he's like played in the coast. He's played at every level. He's been part of management. He's been an assistant coach. He's been a head coach. He's been nominated, I believe, twice now for Coach of the Year nomination. I don't think anybody expected us to be in the playoffs the year before, just as no one expected us to be out of the playoffs a year like last year. He's a good coach because he knows the game really well. He's been a part of the game really well in every aspect. That he's a good communicator. I think he's a guy that you, as a player, would love to play for. I think if you go talk to our guys, they'll say, love Bruno. Okay, you love him, but we didn't win. So, you got to love him more because you want him to be your head coach if you love a guy, So our buy-in has to be complete.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz. So when it came to Andrew Burnett. And so I have to tell you, I am glad that Barry Trotz is going to meet with the media at 3:00 before he meets with us. We'll play Barry's press conference, and then we'll probably go a little bit deeper at 3:40 when he sits down with us. But I'm kind of glad that there's somebody else out there now to ask the questions about Burnett, because it was very tiring last year to ask him every week if he was considering firing the coach. But that was the season that they were having last year, which was an unmitigated disaster. Now, I woke up this morning thinking that on the scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the hottest a head coach's seat could be, Andrew Burnett's seat was 10. That no matter how much Barry Trotz had gone all in defending Andrew Burnett, that there was really only so much leeway. And that at some point, if they didn't win to start this season, there wasn't going to be anything else that Trotz could do as far as Burnett's concerned, and he'd have to fire him. And so I actually had wondered maybe a couple weeks ago, just to myself, I had wondered, are there going to be any staff changes to the coaching staff, or is this going to be like the Titans where, oh, no, everybody's friends here. It'll be great. You'll see. And it's not, because the Predators today made a staff change. Todd Richards out, Luke Richardson in, hired as a new assistant coach. And I asked this question, and I know the answer because the midday show was talking about this, but I said, am I the only one that feels like this is Andrew Burnett insurance? Start off 0-4, see ya, and you're out, and the guy who was coaching Chicago last year, he's in. Because I looked up the background this morning when Luke Richardson was hired, and I know Willie was on there talking about how he's a defensive coach and they're going to bring him in to work on the defense, and this is going to be about the defense, and I know. And I know that in a perfect world, instead of starting off 0-4, the Predators start off 4-0. And that Luke Richardson and Andrew Burnett work hand in hand, and they have one of the best turnarounds in the history of the NHL. I know. But let's be realistic. Let's live on planet Earth for a second here. I looked up Andrew Burnett's history and Luke Richardson's history. And to the best of my knowledge, these two have never worked together. Whereas the other two guys on the staff, those were Andrew Burnett's guys. And in fact, if you look at the coaching staff, the two dudes on the staff that are staying are Burnett guys. Todd Richards was here under John Hines, which makes me think that's kind of a front office guy, if that makes any sense. And the one thing I am going to ask Barry Trotz about, because he's not going to say like, hey, I hired Luke Richardson so that 5 games into the season, I can fire Andrew Burnett if I want to fire Andrew Burnett. But the one thing I am going to ask is, was Luke Richardson a Burnett hire or was it a Trotz hire? Because look, it's totally possible. We get too dug in on people wanting to hire people that they've worked with before, because it does happen a lot. But one thing that we also kind of overlook is, hey, guys may be friends even though they've never worked together. Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker were good friends even though they had never worked together before. So maybe this is a Burnett hire and he and Luke Richardson are buddies. But if we're applying the duck theory that we have applied throughout the history of this program, that if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. This looks like Luke Richardson was hired on this staff by Barry Trotz to be the Andrew Burnett insurance, that if everybody else is right and Barry Trotz is wrong about whether or not Burnett's lost the room, that he can very quickly make the change and go to Luke Richardson. The guy who should be pissed about this today is not Burnett, because I woke up and I thought to myself, again, I woke up this morning before this Luke Richardson news and I thought Burnett's seat was 10 out of 10 in terms of hotness. So it can't be any hotter. The guy who should be pissed off about this is Carl Taylor, because I thought when it came to Carl Taylor that he was kind of next in line, that he was the AHL coach. They fired Laviolette, they hired John Hines, and Taylor did his thing at Milwaukee. And then they fired Hines, and the Admirals were playing, and they considered Taylor, and they interviewed Taylor, and then they went with Burnett. And so it's like, okay, well, if you keep passing over Taylor, then eventually, hey, you start the year, Burnett gets fired, you call up Taylor because he's earned it. One of the assistant coaches on the Milwaukee staff put up a tweet that's like, this guy needs to be a head coach. And so I just assumed that, again, Burnett's seat was 10 out of 10 in terms of the heat on that seat. I still think it's 10 out of 10, but the guy who should be pissed about today is not Burnett, that they went out and hired his obvious replacement to put on the staff as an interim coach. The guy who should be pissed is Carl Taylor, because Carl Taylor, I thought, was going to get a shot if things didn't go well for Burnett, and now it looks like Luke Richardson's going to be the guy who gets his shot if things don't go well for Burnett. 615-737-1025, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com here on the program. Steve, who once vowed to never listen to the show again, by the way, is back in the YouTube chat going crazy, and he said, don't lie, you're going to ask him where he wants to have dinner tonight because you and Trotz are that close. Let me say this. Barry Trotz and I have a zero relationship other than saying hey to each other. Zero relationship outside of what you hear on the air. I'm serious about that. Zero. You talk about what are you guys going to have today? We've never had a meal together. Ever. So don't get too caught up in what you want to believe. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Adam in Portland's going to kick us off today. Adam, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
So it's interesting what you're talking about, dude. And so if you say Burnett, which I agree, I think he's 11 out of 10. If he's 11 out of 10, what is Trotz? What's his hot seat? Because I would say he would have to be like 7 or 8, dude. Because it's like it's either the player's fault or the coach's fault. And you're telling us it's the players haven't figured out the coach yet. So it's not the coach's fault when we all think it's the coach's fault. So, like, your hot seat should be tied to his hot seat. My question to you, Jared, is there's no such thing as a 3-year hot seat, is there? So, like, if he comes out and says 2028 the season, like, then you shouldn't be a part of it. You shouldn't be here for it, your big plan, because there's no such thing as a hot seat that lasts that long in sports. It's all the Haslam's are idiots. Like, what, you're going to keep a guy – like keep a loser in Nashville for 3 full years? No way, dude. So make it make sense. I just don't feel like Trotz should be getting a big pass like that.
Okay, so I'm going to use Sam Presti as the example here, the general manager of the OKC Thunder, because he built it up the first time. His first draft choice was Kevin Durant, and he built it up with Durant and Westbrook and Harden and Serge Ibaka, and they went to the finals, and they were kind of on the cusp for a couple of years, and then Durant went to Golden State. And then after that, trying to keep the team competitive with Russell Westbrook, they went out and added Paul George and Carmelo Anthony, and that didn't work. So they let Sam Presti tear the team down and build it back up again with SGA and Holmgren and Williams and all those guys that just won the title for OKC. And the reason I bring this up is, again, I think you're looking at it like, oh, you lost this year, fired. But when Barry Trotz took the job in 2023 and was given the job full-time in July of 2023, if when Barry Trotz took the job and they traded away Ekholm and Jeannot and Granlund and Niederreiter and all those guys for picks and prospects, if they said, hey, the plan is that these picks and prospects are going to be the next wave of the Nashville Predators, the next core of the team, which I was in favor of, then I think you have to let Trotz do his thing. And far too often in this league, general managers get multiple coaches. Again, the average general manager tenure is 4.79 years, according to Robbie Stanley. Well, I mean, do you want to give Trotz 5 years or not? Because I'm talking about 2028. That would be giving Trotz the 5 years that everybody else gets. Let's go to Rob, who's up next here on the program. Rob, thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. So Luke Richardson is the type of defenseman when he played that had brought a lot of character. He's the kind of guy that you don't want to be in front of the net with. He's the kind of guy that brings a lot of passion to the game, and he's the kind of guy that brings a lot of character. Why you're gaslighting this, I have no idea, but he does bring character, something that you should learn a little bit about when you're talking about people, especially when you're saying stuff that you don't know.
Like what?
Comment. What? You're just gaslighting this for no reason at all.
What am I gaslighting? What did I gaslight? Is he not
gaslighting?
Is he not the insurance plan for Burnett if they fire him?
Why are you saying that? Why can't he be the person that is actually bringing a little character to the defensive team? Why are you saying that? You don't know it.
So you're telling me that Luke Richardson is taking this job and that they're hiring him just to work on the defense, and that if they start off 0-6, Luke Richardson isn't thinking they're going to fire Burnett and make me the coach?
I think, personally, that they brought in a person that knows the defense very well, and that they're bringing in somebody that has character. Look it up.
I don't understand what you mean by that. So you're saying he should turn the job down if they offer it to him?
You're lacking it. You're a gaslighter. It's what you do.
What am I gaslighting?
You gaslight for a living, Jared. It's what you do.
What is the gaslight, Rob? I'm fine with you calling me a gaslighter if you tell me what I'm saying that's gaslighting, but you have to tell me something.
Oh, my gosh. What do you say? You know what? The definition of gaslighting is setting a fire where none exists. Basically, this person, they dumped a guy that wasn't doing the job, and they brought in a person with character. Just go look up Luke Richardson on YouTube, him carving somebody's head off in front of the net, and then tell me the guy's not going to teach the same thing, which is lacking here. It's a good hire. It's a great hire. It's not a safety insurance policy. It's not something that you can manufacture as gaslighting.
I don't understand. How am I manufacturing this? This is what everybody thought. This is what our midday show thought. And they've got Willie on there who calls the games. What are you talking about?
I told you what I'm talking about. They hired a character person. I'm happy for it.
If you think, thank you for your call, Rob. If you think that a team that has a coach that is clearly on the hot seat, again, Barry Trotz got asked every effing week on this program if he was going to fire the coach. For all you people out there that think, well, I'm buddy with Trotz and I don't ask the hard questions, I asked him every week if he was going to fire the coach. Buddy with the GM is what the morning show at the other station did with Ran when they asked him about the Kendrick and Drake beef and not about the team on getting fired and the owner and everything else. That's a real big boy interview. So every week I asked about firing the coach. He took off like 2 weeks after the season was over before he came back and said Burnett was going to be the coach. Burnett's seat could not be hotter. Andrew Burnett. And I like Andrew Burnett. And I think Andrew Burnett's a good coach. Now, I still think he should have been fired because I think he lost the room. But Andrew Burnett should thank his lucky stars that he works for the Predators and he works for Barry Trotz, because anywhere else he'd be gone. He would have been gone. 12 games into last season, he'd have been fired. And so if you think that, this is a character hire and this is about morale and this is maybe, but if it looks like a duck, where they just went out and hired an experienced head coach and put him on the bench to work with the defense, I'm telling you, it looks like they're going out of their way to, hey, if we're wrong about Burnett and we have to make a change, we're changing to this guy. That's what it looks like. And if you don't want those optics, you don't hire this guy. It's as simple as that. But what am I gaslighting? Again, gaslighting is when you just lie to the people. I'm not lying about this. Again, I don't know what Barry Trotz's thought is on this. I'm telling you what it looks like and what I'm interpreting it as. More of your phones. 615-737-1025. Again, Barry's press conference at 3 o'clock. Trotz after the press conference. Right here with us, Stillman and Company, 1025. What is it for the game?
My definition of competitive is that your team, for a team to be considered competitive, my definition is that you must have a legitimate chance to win the championship. Now, Willie and I have had this conversation many times. Willie's not here to correct me if I'm wrong, but if Willie's listening, please do so, sir. Willie's definition of competing when it comes to the NHL is making the playoffs. If your team is capable of making the playoffs, your team is competitive. I disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think that if your team is to be considered competitive in my eyes, speaking about the NHL specifically, you have to be able to win the Stanley Cup. Florida, Edmonton, Carolina, Vegas, Colorado, Dallas, teams like that. There are others. Those are just the ones that came to mind first. Those are teams that they have, in my opinion, a legitimate chance to win. The Predators right now, to me, are not a competitive team. And also, in my opinion, if you are not a competitive team, you should be rebuilding, retooling in some form or fashion. Because what happens when you don't is you end up being the Predators of recent years. You squeak into the playoffs, you finish 8th in the conference, you lose in the first round, and you get a first round pick in the latter half of the round. That's not going to help you the same way that having the 5th pick in the draft might help you, for example.
There you go. That was Adam Vingan on the Midday Show. And again, his big thing right there was, okay, you say you're retooling, but then you go and trade for Eric Holla. Which way is it? And again, are you really going to tear this thing down, or are you just going to try to get into that middle that half the teams in the league sit in, where they really can make the playoffs, but they don't actually have a chance to win the cup? And I will just say this, for years, the Predators lived there. Post 2017, I really felt like post 2020, post 2019, they weren't going to the bubble and winning. Everybody knew that. So 2019 was the last year where it felt like they were actually competitive. And they had some serious flaws on that team. Now, look, St. Louis was in their division, won the cup that year. The Predators won the division with 100 points. So it's not as if you can argue that they weren't competitive that year, but I'm just saying. I think today they have to kind of put their foot down with the fans and say, hey, we're going to try to win this year, but our focus is really on rebuilding the team. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, here's my problem with the Predators. They just traded a 4th-round pick for an old, slow player when they could have used that 4th-round pick for a potential young player like Trevor Zegras. Trotz doesn't believe in young players. He's made that pretty clear. So I'm going to back Barry Trotz on not taking the risk on Trevor Zegras here for a second, because I don't think Trevor Zegras has ever done anything. Like, Trevor Zegras was on the cover of the video game, and I guess he had like a good college career. I don't know. I don't keep up with college hockey, and I don't give a rat's ass about it. So I guess he had a good college career. He hadn't done anything in the NHL. Hasn't done anything. And a lot of you are going to say, but Jared, what's the risk here? You buy low, and maybe there's a chance he pops. And that's true. But Barry Trotz has done that. Did you guys watch Justin Barron this year play defense? He's a right shot defenseman that the Predators dumped Alexander Carrier's salary for. And the thing was, well, he was a 1st-round pick in 2020. Justin Barron sucks. But hey, he was a 1st-round pick. Let's give him a try. Again, you guys think that when you do this, it's all of a sudden going to pop. It's, we took a shot on this guy who didn't work out in the other place, and it's going to be Sam Bennett. That's not really how this works. You do that, you end up with Cody Glass, whom for years David Poyle was like, well, Cody Glass was taken high in the draft. I know. Yeah, he was taken high in the draft, and that's about his career highlight right there. And that one random hat trick he had against the Avalanche, when at the beginning of the game I turned to Adam Vingan and I said, yeah, I don't think this Cody Glass thing's working out. And then Cody Glass went on and had a hat trick, and then we never heard from him again. Kirby Dach, he was taken high in the draft, and then Chicago shipped him off to Montreal, and he sucks. I'm not a Zegras. I feel like he's just like I just kind of feel like he hadn't done anything in the NHL. And that's not the kind of players that they want. That one doesn't worry me. There are some moves that they don't make that do bother me. that I'm like, okay, well, it's like the center position. If you're going to have Steven Stamkos on this team, he needs to be on the wing, and you need to get him a real center. I mean, last year I kept saying, so who's the second line center of this team going to be? Well, we're going to give Tommy Novak a try. I'm like, okay, well, you better get Colton Sissons ready for that spot, because even though he's not a second line center, at least he's a warm body that can play center. And then it turned into Stamkos playing center, and that drove me nuts. Just absolutely drove me nuts. Jeff said the defense was and is terrible. Richardson was and is a more steady and intense as a player and a coach. Regardless of whether or not Luke Richardson is insurance or not, Richardson does change the dynamic and replaces one of Burnett's clones, which I think was necessary. Todd Richards was not one of Burnett's clones. He was on John Hines' staff. You mean to tell me they hired a Burnett Bobo to work for John Hines? That doesn't make any sense. That one does not make any sense. Mike from Pennsylvania says Barry Trotz did not have the guts to make the head coaching move. He should now be tied to the head coach. And it tells me that Trotz can't make the big boy moves outside of overpaying a goalie. I am going to tell you this right now, and I mean this with all sincerity. I do worry that Trotz is too loyal. That Trotz is too hell-bent on the best case scenario happening. The thing that I know about Brian Callahan is, like, Brian Callahan and Denard Wilson, they just think they can coach up bad players. And I think there is this mindset that Trotz has that is, well, I was a coach and David Poyle was patient with me and I ended up winning a lot, and they didn't treat me right in Washington, and we won the cup when they were ready to run me out of town, and we won the cup. So I know how tough it is, and I think Andrew Burnett has it. Whereas I look at it and I'm like, those Marchessault comments were pretty glaring on the locker cleanout day. And that for me was, I think the coach has lost the room and he's got to be fired. And I just, when it comes to Trotz, I think that it's probably 80-20 in favor of firing Burnett, and Trotz is going to take the 20%. And that does bother me. Like that, I'm like, dude, I think he lost the room for whatever reason. Burnett's a good coach. I don't disagree with that. But for whatever reason, it didn't work. And there was nothing during the year that gave me any sense that it was going to work going forward. So that one I do agree with. When you say he won't make the big boy move, it's not that he won't make the big boy move. I mean, he put his foot down on Matt Duchene. He got rid of Ryan Johansson, finally. He moved off of John Hines when everybody thought he was going to keep John Hines, and John Hines sucks. Somebody texted him yesterday and said, Andrew Burnett's the worst coach in the history of the Predators. And I said, he's not the worst coach. John Hines was the worst coach. And the texter was like, yeah, you're right. So he has made some of those moves, but this one about not moving off Burnett, I do not agree with it. I whatsoever do not agree with it. And I knew this was going to happen at the end of the year, and I guaranteed Burnett was coming back because I just didn't think that Trotz was going to pull the trigger because I thought he was going to be too loyal to the coach. And it does feel like he's been too loyal to the coach. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll get back to your phones. Plus, one thing that I'm sure Trotz will get asked about one final time, but everybody here tells me, you can't do this. And I was watching TSN this morning. Yes, in Canada. I was watching TSN. And they were telling me the thing for another team that you people tell me, you can't do that. They're talking about should another team be doing. So I've got a little bit of a rant. We'll get to that in your phones next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 again.
In 2 months, UC Soros gets not only a pay raise, but he's locked into an 8-year contract. He's had 3 years of declining numbers. What's your level of concern as that's about to kick in?
Well, I think my concern, obviously, I 5-on-5 is, or the way you play in front of your goaltender is paramount. Every team, you can take a goaltender, you can take, the Vezina Trophy winner, the top guys in our team in the league right now, and put them on our group this year. I think they would have declining numbers too. That's how I feel. So I believe I have a lot of trust in Juice. Juice has an ability he still moves very, very well. I think there's lots of tread on the tire.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz in his last media availability. And let me say this. I know they're not getting rid of UC Soros in the basically 1 week that they have to be able to do so. But can I just say that when I brought up the idea last year before the deadline about, hey, you can get rid of Soros today, and I might send one of those first-round picks, at the end of the first round to get rid of him and be done with him and be done with his contract and everything else. If I had to, you can get rid of him. You can. And people said, Jared, you can't do that. Adam Vingan, people will not want to play for the Predators if they trade UC Soros right before his no trade clause kicks in. They can't do that. And I'm like, I'll worry about that later. I mean, I've seen organizations with the worst reputations clean it up in about 5 minutes. This morning, TSN in Canada, they were talking about, should Vancouver trade Elias Pettersson before his no move kicks in? That was the conversation. Should they trade Elias Pettersson? And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. Adam Vingan tells me you can't do that. So I'm sure Trotz will get asked about Soros. I think that, again, if Trotz gets fired, a lot of you people are talking about Burnett. I don't think it's Burnett that's going to get him fired. I think it's going to be Soros that gets him fired. But again, don't tell me that I can't trade Soros. You can tell me that you don't want to trade Soros. And when I say you, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the Predators. They can tell me all they want. They don't want to trade Soros. That's fine. That's their opinion. But don't tell me that you can't trade Soros, because you absolutely could trade Soros. And they just don't want to. One texter says, Trotz can get a little time for the players, but what mulligan does Trotz get for bringing Burnett back if they are terrible again? Well, then he's just going to fire him. I mean, that's the mulligan. Yeah, he was a good young coach. We hired him. It worked well. He was a finalist for the Jack Adams, and then he didn't mesh with these veteran players, so we're moving off of him, and we're going to go get a veteran coach. That's what that means. One texter says, the caller that said that you were gaslighting said that you've been gaslighting all week long. So he obviously loves the show because he listens all week. I love when people call in all mad at you and say they hate your show, but they still listen. That's some gaslighting right there. So I've said this when it comes to the program. I think there are 3 separate groups of people that listen to the show. I think there are the people that love me and love the show. And they're like, oh, I got to hear what Jared's going to say. I don't always agree with him, but I love him and I love his passion and his personality. And so that's 1/3 of the show. Then I think there's a third of the audience that hates me, but loves the show. Loves the fact that we talk about the Titans and the Predators. Loves the fact that we have strong opinions. Loves the fact that, the show is focused and doesn't sit there and, talk about non-sports stuff just to pass the time because I have talent and some other people don't. But they don't really like me. They don't like the opinions. They don't like the way I do things, and they don't. And then the third group is the people that hate me and hate the show. They just hate it. They hate listen. And I think those people listen more intently than the other 2 groups. And I really mean that. And so when somebody doesn't like me, but they listen to the show, I don't get too worked up one way or another. And if people don't listen to the show, if they're like, I'm never going to listen to the show again, I don't get too worked up about that either. By the way, Steve, who's going crazy in the YouTube chat, Steve said that he'd never listen to the show again, and here he is going crazy about how Rand was a good general manager and Trotz is a bad general manager, which is wild as far as I'm concerned. One texter into the text line says, so do you want to suck until Soros' contract is over? I vowed to never listen again too, but damn you, Jared. That guy was gaslighting you for sure. Let me say this. I have begged, I have done everything I can do to try to keep the Predators from signing UC Saros to that contract. I tried. I told Barry Trotz to his face on the show, I wouldn't do it. I don't think he can win in the playoffs. And then they went out and did it. And I've said, at the trade deadline, they should trade him. Get out from it now. I know you've already moved off from Askarov and you look stupid for that, but I'm not crying over spilt milk. Move off of Saros. And then during the Cup final, I said, well, maybe maybe Edmonton will be desperate enough to take on Saros to prove to McDavid that they're serious. And so maybe you can. And now I'm still saying, still got a week. I know they're not going to do it, but I do not want to live to try. Again, my son is going to be 9 years old when the UC Saros contract is over. I am convinced that UC Saros will never win a playoff series. Convinced. Because I just don't think he's good enough. And I just don't think the team around him is ever going to be good enough unless James Hagens ends up being Sidney Crosby. I just don't think they're ever going to be good enough to be able to do that. 615-737-1025 here on the program. If you want to weigh in, we may hit some more of your phones, but Barry Trotz is set to meet with the media next. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to hear the press conference. We're going to take notes, and then we'll go deeper if we have stronger questions, whatever, with Barry at 3:40. So that is coming up next ahead of the draft and free agency. Stillman and Company live from BetMGM Sports Lounge at Bridgestone Arena. It is 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and we are live atop the BetMGM Sports Lounge here at Bridgestone Arena, where Predators general manager Barry Trotz will join us after his press conference is over, so approximately 3:40. Now, Trotz's press conference was supposed to begin at 3 o'clock, and I believe Trotz is running a little bit behind, so it may be a little bit later than 3:40. Reed, I do believe you are on the button. You've got the Trotz press conference in one ear right now, if I am not mistaken.
Yes, I do.
All right, good. So Reed will let us know when Barry Trotz is ready to meet with the media. Again, the Predators are picking 5th in the draft on Friday night. Here's what's important to me, and I do have my list of questions for Trotz, but the number one thing that's important to me is what's the priority for the team? Is the priority on 2026 and winning with Brady Shea and Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos and Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi and UC Saros? Or is the plan really about 2028? And there was a little nugget that I just read about on Twitter. Apparently, Igor Surin, the first-round pick of the Predators last year, played in the KHL in Russia. He's 18 years old. He assigned a 2-year extension in the KHL. So he won't even be eligible to come over to the Predators until 2027. So that's what I'm talking about is, hey, are we more worried about the 28 team or are we worried about the 26 team, which would be this upcoming season? I do wonder when it comes to the draft, and I'm sure he'll get asked about this. And if not, again, if he doesn't get asked about this in the press conference, he'll get asked about it when he sits down with us. But I do, and I was talking to the midday show today at the end of their show about this. Scott Wheeler in The Athletic has the Predators drafting Porter Martone, who is a big goal-scoring winger with the 5th overall pick. And Martone scores now. And you know me, I'm like, hey, big boy forwards, they don't just have to be centers. But I personally have to believe that they're, with all the centers in this draft, they're going to have to take a first-line center because I don't think they expect to draft this high in 2026. So if a Hagens is there, and one of these guys will be there between Hagens, Denoyer, and Martin and O'Brien, one of those guys will be there. So I don't see them passing on a center, but we'll ask Barry about that. I do wonder, are there going to be some hockey trades that really shake this up? Dumping Alexander Carrier is not shaking your room up. Dumping UC Saros is shaking your room up. So that's what I care about. You know, are we going to see some of those hockey trades? And then just some other stuff. You know, is Luke Richardson going to be Andrew Burnett insurance? Was he a Trotz hire? Was he a Burnett hire? And so on and so forth. Let's hit some of your phones. Before, though, we get Barry Trotz. And then when Reed tells me Trotz is up, that's when we'll go to it here on the program. One texter says, what was wrong with the Askarov trade? Askarov couldn't even stay in the NHL half the time. He was supposed to be able to take over for Saros. He couldn't even back up for the Sharks. He has always been an absolute head case. So here's where I view the Askarov, because this time last year when I was saying, don't sign Saros, trade Saros and sign a bridge goalie and then turn it over to Askarov, I wasn't operating under the guise that Askarov was going to be Pekka Rinne 2.0. Because, again, goalies are very fickle in this league. You know, whether or not they end up being any good. Like, goalies are very, very fickle. They're like closers in baseball. Every now and then there's a guy who's Mariano Rivera, but for the most part, they're really good one year and they're not really good the next year. You know, the San Diego Padres have had a bunch of closers over the years. There's Trevor Hoffman, and then there's Heath Bell. And I think that Saros is more like Heath Bell. The way I viewed it was, if you move off of Saros, you can sign Kevin Lankinen, for instance, to be the starting goalie. You could sign Anthony Stolars to be the goalie, Ilya Samsonov to be the goalie. You know, one of these backup-ish goalies, and you can stick him in net. And everyone's like, no, can't do that. My thing is Saros. I don't think you can win with Saros. So I don't think you need to commit to him for 8 years if you can't win with him. It's really not about Askarov. And the Askarov trade to me really, I think, hinges on whether or not David Edstrom's good. Because if David Edstrom is your second-line center for a while, then I think you've got something. Barry Trotz is headed to the podium as we speak. Reed will once again let us know when he gets up there to actually start speaking. And I do wonder what we're going to do with the commercials this hour, because who knows with Barry Trotz. Matthew from Jolton says Lou Richardson has a history with Trotz in New York, I believe. I looked up when it came to Burnett. Here is Barry Trotz at the podium with the media ahead of Friday night's draft.
Obviously would have liked to jump up higher in the draft lottery, but even at the position you're in, number 5, you feel pretty good about where you stand given the amount of talented centers that are likely available in this particular draft?
Yeah, I think we're going to get a really good player. We're fortunate that there is a number of good centers in this draft. They all bring different elements. I would say anywhere from, you talk to most draft experts, anywhere from 2 or 3, I should say, on to probably 8 or 9. It's a pretty close group, and it is. I've been in the meetings. I've seen all the top 10, 12 picks on film and live, and I would agree with most every team's assessment that there's a good crop of players in that. And then after that point, probably in the 10, 11 range, it starts to fall off a little bit. But there's always good players, even if it looks like you go down the list every year. There's guys in the 2nd and 3rd round that make impact in this league. So.
Barry, with Schaefer and Misa kind of projected to go 1 and 2, is it kind of fair to say it's anyone's guess what happens at 3 and 4 before you guys are on the clock?
Yes. We've been trying to figure it out, trying to find out any information we can. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's I wouldn't be surprised if a name that we have 3 ends up going later. Vice versa for every team. I think they're probably in the same boat. It's going to be whatever eyes got onto that player, whatever qualities that those teams really, really feel will be the difference maker will probably be the deciding vote. And then whoever is the influencer in the room for every team in terms of their scouting will probably be the difference maker.
I want to ask about a specific player. Porter Martone, a really physically gifted player, great offensive player, but he doesn't play center. He plays wing.
Yep.
How much does that matter to you, the position versus the skill the player brings?
Well, there's a little bit more, probably a little bit more need, but if that player is available, you can look at past drafts. I think I can't remember Brady Tkachuk, player that went before Brady Tkachuk. If you look at where it is now, they would probably want Brady Tkachuk based on where players go. So we're going to look at the best player, and if there's a big discrepancy, then position won't matter. But if there's very little, then we'll probably go a little more position. That's all. But that'd be a great pick at 5.
Barry, you've talked about the plan, and part of that has been building for the future. You got, I think it's 9 draft picks this year, including 4 in the top 35. But you've also made moves to acquire veterans and be competitive in the now. As you've gone through your process of evaluating how you do things, evaluating where the team is at, do you feel that you might need to pick a lane, a little bit more definitively of kind of looking ahead to the future, or being more in the now, or do you feel like you're good to kind of continue how you are?
Well, I think, to be quite honest with you, I want to see what this group can do. I mean, the plan all along was for we had a gap that the older players that we have to sort of carry the load. And I've said it many times, I'd like to start blending those younger players that are starting to say work their way out of the American Hockey League, get some experience and have say 2 veterans and a young player and sort of spread our team out a little bit. And that hasn't changed. A year from now, it may flip to one or the other, but I think right now we've got to give this group, the coaching staff and the players, to stay on the original plan. But we have a lot of players that we're pretty flexible. Most of the way we're set up right now, all our call-ups will be players that are, can go up and down. They don't need waivers. You're going to see guys that you're going to see a Kemmel. You're going to see a Reed Schaefer. You're going to see, like last year, we had LaRue and Svechkov. They came up a lot earlier than I expected and wanted to, quite frankly. But they're already there. And, even in the case of Svechkov and LaRue, they don't need waivers. They could still go down. So there's a lot of flexibility in our lineup, which I wanted, which is with full disclosure, that was the intent, that we would have the ability to do that this year. And then I have, I think 5 guys that are in their last year of their contract on forward, and a couple of guys on the back end that are either restricted or unrestricted. So we have lots of flexibility if guys pop. If our team gets back to where I think it can, then we can still supplement with using the older players. But our call-ups are going to get a lot of games this year. That's the way I feel. I think this group will be energized. The older players, as much as they like playing with veteran players a lot of times, they're going to need a lot of these young guys. They're going to need their legs. They're going to need their enthusiasm, because it's going to be a grind. This year, the schedule is more condensed. The schedule is we're going over to Sweden. So there's going to be very few practice days. Travel's going to be tight, and we're going to have to be on our game, and we're going to use all our pieces. And sometimes that youthful energy can make the grind a little bit easier. So I'm hoping that's the case.
Yep. Barry, I know the team put out something recently on Roman and his condition. I'm just curious how confident you are in what you've heard. And is that something you're having to plan toward that maybe you weren't aware of until fairly recently?
Yeah. When we found that out last year with Roman, we jumped on that pretty quick. We got him out to a specialist. He's been working with it. He's had good success with the treatment to this point. I've been told by the doctors and my medical team that he's trended very well, and it should be ready to go, and is looking forward to not having to have the effects of it as much as he did maybe last year. And if he can get back to the level of Katie Ledecky, I mean, she's done pretty good having the same sort of situation. It doesn't mean that Roman can't have the success that we're used to Roman having. And in Roman's case, I think in some ways you're going to get a healthier Roman, not only physically because he's had some time off, but also mentally with getting this off his plate and the effects of it. So I'm hoping that Yost has a really good bounce back season for us, and get guys like Jeremy Lauzon back for a season, and Stammer and Marchessault and Shea feeling that this is their team now. And part of it, I think that part of our team should be much better. And then obviously with the move, I made a move to bring in Luke Richardson to our staff. I just thought we needed a new set of eyes. We got a lot of young defensemen coming in. Luke has got a lot of experience working with the defense. Our 5-on-5 game is to me, that's where we failed the most last year. And he's been on a lot of good teams. He's been a assistant coach for a long time. He's been a head coach a few times. So he's got some experience. Adding those extra eyes and that experience with just a different voice, I feel it's a real upgrade to our staff. It re-energizes us a little bit, because last year was tough in a lot of ways for everybody in the organization. So hopefully these few things will allow us to get back and get back the joy that we and success that we usually have.
Barry, what's your appetite for potentially considering trades with some of your premium picks in this year's draft to help the team maybe right away versus waiting 3 or 4 years when the
I'm all for it if the right situation comes. It seems that there's I'm trying to do that. Everybody's in this mode, I think, this week of trying to assess what they can get, what they can give up. as you get closer to the draft, it'll be a lot clearer. There's teams that have cap situation that they want to clear up because, they might be in the win now mode and they want to make another big move. They may, there's things that I'm not even thinking of that may come our way. So yeah, I'm open to that. If someone wants to, needs picks and wants to move past a really good player, I'm all in for that. I never turn my nose up at any good player. So, but everybody's looking for players right now, which is, that just tells you what the parity in the NHL is right now.
Barry, kind of along the same lines, you guys put a lot of effort into acquiring the assets that you have for this draft with 9 picks, and I think it's 5 in the top 55 or something. How comfortable do you feel sitting here right now that either you could package some of those to try to move up and get specific guys, or that you could sit at 9 and get a lot of guys?
I'm sit at 5. At 5 or 9?
No, I'm sorry. Just you have so many overall picks. You've got a lot high in the draft. I guess the balance between maybe packaging a couple of those to move up even maybe elsewhere in the first round versus just staying put and getting 9 players.
I've talked to there's a couple teams that have multiple picks in the draft. We're one of them. There's other teams. You can do your research on that. We're all trying to do the top things. Everybody's trying to move into the top 10, maybe 11. Most of those teams don't want, they don't want to listen to you until it's either your top player. If you want, you hear rumors of any team from, 3, 4, 5. I haven't put that rumor out that they may, for a top player, they would move that pick. There's probably some truth to that, but the player that some of those teams and that we would ask for to get that pick would be your top player. So that is a little bit of a stretch, I think, right now. But they were a few days from the draft. I think moving up is going to be very difficult for not only us but a couple other teams that even have picks that are even closer to the top 10. That are a little closer there. I think it's going to be a little more difficult, but you never know. If you can find a need and a partner for that, it can happen. But right now, it's I haven't found a way to do that, and a couple of my counterparts are in the same boat, haven't either at this moment. But who knows? We're still a few days from the draft.
Barry, you guys spend a ton of time and resources, a lot of data coming in about all these players, film study, getting to know them, all this stuff, all these prospects. But eventually, you do have to order them and rank them in some way. Is there a moment that definitively? How do you know definitively about one player versus another player? How do you guys kind of settle on that with conviction?
Well, I think we go through them. Like our scouts have gone through all the prospects. They've seen them. They've done their interviews. They've done the research, be it social media, talk to the people that are in their tight circle, done of all their assessments, gone to the combine. I had enough steak that last week in Buffalo. We'd taken out the top players every night that I was starting to feel like Biz. But it's great to know those kids. You get to find out which kids you have. Probably sometimes a separator as much as you want when you go through analytics and you go through feel. Everything's projection. These kids are at different stages. They're 18 years old. Some 18-year-olds develop physically a little quicker than other 18-year-olds. Some have a little more personality. Some come from different countries. You take all that into account and you try to see the player 5 years down the road, and that's a not an easy thing to do because there's everything from the natural growth of as young men growing into men and then growing into professional hockey players and all the different sort of pressures that come with that, be it expectations, family, agents, teams, all the friends, social media, all those things affect players a little differently. So you're looking for a player that can handle, hopefully, all that and grow and become a really good player. And that's, I mean, as much as there's great success in the draft, there's a lot of failures in the draft. So these scouts have done a wonderful job, not only our team, but all the teams, that they put a lot of time, energy, and wisdom and experience into the pursuit of finding the next star in this league. So we feel very confident if we sat at the draft and the picks go exactly like our list, we're going to get a really good player. If they don't go exactly like our list, we're going to get a really good player. So I feel pretty confident we're going to get someone that will be a really good Nashville Predator for a long time.
Barry, can I double dip you here with a?
Sure, go ahead. You're going to do it anyways.
Possibly. One, I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about Hagens. Obviously a lot of pluses, but maybe some concerns about size and didn't have a huge offensive year. And then the other one is on Marchessault. I know you mentioned earlier that he would be a guy that you're counting on to kind of take more, I guess, ownership, the team next year. But there have been some rumors, speculation, about him and a possible trade. Are you very confident that he'll be back and that he wants to be back for next year?
Okay, well, we'll start with the Marchessault. Actually, minutes ago, the reason I was a minute late here was I was actually speaking with his agent, and there's no truth to any of that. So, if Marshy is going to look for something, he's going to be calling his agent, and he's going to be calling me. So there's nothing to that. I just was checking in with him because people are going, what's happening? And there's nothing happening. I didn't know if anything was happening, so I just double checked with him that maybe I missed something. So I didn't miss anything. And Marshy, I think is, it was a difficult year for him. Everything from the family being his, he had some death in the family, and it busted up training camp for him, and we got off to a bad start and all that. So he produced pretty well, even though a lot of people will say he didn't have a really top year for him. He still produced at a pretty high rate. So I know he's too competitive not to have a good year. And then in terms of James Hagens, that's what you're talking about. He's a player right in our wheelhouse, and in those numbers. So, I mean, he's a good example of a player who could go, probably as high as 2 or 3, and go later on in that. But he's a tremendous player, and we're trying to assess. Sometimes it's Marchessault's a good example. If you take his career and you say, he couldn't play because he wasn't 6'2", then you're making a big mistake. This guy's won a Stanley Cup and has been a playoff MVP. So sometimes the yardstick isn't and shouldn't be the deciding factor.
As you look back through your defense last year, how much do you feel like that needs to be revamped, and how much that in your mind has to come internally versus maybe some external options this offseason?
Yeah, I think probably the best way to describe it, I thought our 5-on-5 play, which is predicated on playing good team defense and breaking out and all that. I didn't think we did a great job of that last year. Consistently, and it showed on our numbers. 5-on-5, it didn't give Juice a chance some nights. The predictability wasn't there. Not having Roman 100% and missing a big chunk of the season, and Lauzon got hurt early and tried to come back, and he got hurt again, and there's 2 big pieces, and then then the general manager traded a couple guys, and all of a sudden the defense got a little bit lean, and I thought for the most part the group at the end did a really good job. I mean, as much as we missed Roman and Yossi, and Lauzon, you got to find out in a tough situation. You got to find out about Willsby. you got to find out a little bit more about a guy like Blankenberg, who was basically, playing in Milwaukee, and he got to play. He's playing top 4 minutes for us in that situation. I think he did a hell of a job coming in like that. So, we made a trade for a guy like Justin Barron. I mean, I thought he grew tremendously, in especially the last 15 games or so. He might have been our best defenseman for long stretches, and his talent is top notch. He's an elite skater, and he can get around the pond pretty good. Shoots the puck really well. It's just getting his confidence and his consistency to the level where we feel we can do that. And we've done a really good job as an organization developing a lot of defensemen. So I feel good about that. So we're in that little bit of transition in some of our areas, but at the same time, we still have some really good pieces. You can't tell me that with a guy like Saros and Yossi, and Shea and Lazan and Marchessault and Stamkos and Forsberg and O'Reilly, that we don't have a fairly competitive team. So some adds and tweaks, a guy like Bunting coming in late, having a full year, adding it might be a small, to some might be a little bit of a small move in terms of Holla, but Holla might be a really good piece for us. He's been here. He still skates very well, and he's played in a role where in New Jersey, where they had him playing with a guy like Hughes, sort of complimenting him, and he played in the playoffs with a couple of young guys in Bratt and Mercer. So Eric's got some really good things that he can add to our group, and he's worked with some young guys as well. So
all right, we're going to go to the final 3 on my waiting list here. Go to Corey.
Hey, Barry, as you know, this team hasn't picked this high very much in its history.
No, Seth Jones.
Yeah, who just won the cup, by the way.
Yeah, just won the cup. And congrats to Seth. That's great. I mean, you always want to see players that you drafted to have success. And
so
Jonesy was good.
When you look at a possible trade for 5, would it have to be another draft pick to add a young core player? Or is there a possibility that there could be such a good current NHL player that you would be willing to give up that pick?
I can tell you there's current NHL good players that I would willing to do that. Just no one's offered me that. But yeah, I think having 5, we haven't drafted for so long. I would have loved to stay at 3, because then I can control a little bit more of that. But that's not the case. We're at 5, but we're like I say, we're going to get a good player that we'll be happy with. But we're getting some good traction. You're going to start seeing these young guys come through the like I said, you said Kemmel and Schaefer. A guy like Stiga's going to have a really good year. He played a lot with James Higgins. We got players like that. You got Surin, who just won a championship in Russia, and who's a player that drives stuff. And you got Tanner Molendyk, Gibson coming out of junior this year. So Cole O'Hare, who was a second team All-Star or first team All-Star in I think it was Hockey East. So we've got some really good people coming. So you're gonna start seeing them.
We're going to finish up with Teresa and then Alex.
Barry, defensive depth in this draft, I can't talk, and combined with having those 2 later picks in the first round, does that maybe make it easier to target somebody, a forward, with that 5th pick overall?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you look at it, the most projections have really, I would say, the top 11 picks. So you could go to different draft models of different people who are draft experts. There's really probably two defensemen in that first 11. I don't think anybody projected at 5 in their models. Doesn't mean that someone doesn't take a defenseman really, really high. But then there's a lot of forwards. So I think we're going to probably draft the likelihood of drafting a forward is a lot higher at 5. And then after that, we'll just see where the the lists go regarding the defensemen. But at some point we're gonna be drafting some defensemen. I'd like to get a goaltender in the fold at some point. Not targeting any round or anything, but those are just future. I'm gonna say future needs. I think we're stocked up on we're starting to get stocked up on the forward group. So, but we're going to take the best player, plain and simple.
I want to go back to what you said earlier about, you wanted to see where this roster goes before picking a lane, I think is what you said on the, the path.
I just want to stay on the path. And then if it gives me some more clarity, if it gets back on the rails the way I think it will, then there won't be really any change in plan. Really, like I said, the plan has always been in pen, and the path has been in pencil, and that's the truth. Because it changes daily. Someone comes with me and gives me a top player for some picks or whatever. I could change the path a little bit, but the plan hasn't changed.
So I mean, I guess and this kind of leads into free agency next week. But are you saying you kind of look at this team as a win now, compete now kind of team?
Well, I think we're still got enough good players that if we go in the right direction, yes. Yeah, last year we didn't, and we weren't part of that, so it was a tough year.
Thank you, everyone. Barry, thank you very much for your time. We'll see you back here on Friday.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz. He will join us coming up. We'll take a break, and we'll probably have Barry on the other side. Stillman and Company live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, we are live above BetMGM Sports Lounge here at Bridgestone Arena, where Barry Trotz will be joining us here momentarily. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, and then we'll hit your phones after Barry. So we had a nice little break there after his press conference. He'll sit down with us. We'll have a nice little break, and then we'll kind of react to all of it. Let me tell all the fine folks out there first, join Robbie and Rex Road as they broadcast live at the Dunkin' Grand reopening in Hermitage at 5205 Old Hickory Boulevard this Friday starting at 8 a.m. The first 100 people in line will win free coffee for 100 days, plus 1025 the game will have your chance to win tickets to an upcoming Nashville concert. So some of the things that kind of, I guess, I had questions for Trotz that were answered in the press conference. I had on my list hockey trades to shake up the club. You know, could we see this group broken up? A Marchessault trade, a Brady Shea trade, a Stamkos trade, a Forsberg trade, a Saros trade. It sounded like from that press conference that, hey, we think that we put together a decent team last year and it all fell apart. We're going to see now that these guys have been here for a year, we're going to see if it goes any differently. So I think that's going to be the first thing, is that, you know, they're not going to do that. So I took that off the list. So the idea about making hockey trades to shake up the club, I took that off the list. I feel like the answer there is no. I also had on the list the Marchessault stuff. Does Marchessault want out? Because Elliot Friedman is reporting that Marchessault's cool with being dealt somewhere where the tax structure is similar to the tax structure here, which kind of rubs me the wrong way if that is in fact true, because what that's telling me is it's telling me that Marchessault wants his cake and wants to eat it too. Trotz said in his press conference that there was no discussion with Marchessault one way or the other. He just talked to Marchessault's agent, and that any talk about requesting a trade or anything else is just not the case because Marchessault hasn't voiced that to his agent, and his agent hasn't voiced it to him. Trotz, let's see, other things. There were a lot of things he was not asked about, which I was a little surprised by. Was not asked about the Luke Richardson thing. Again, the Predators hired Luke Richardson to coach the defense today. And Luke Richardson last year at this time was the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. So that to me feels like Andrew Burnett insurance, but I was surprised he wasn't asked about that. So we will be asking about that. Trying to look through the notes here. Chase asked a question, and which was a very long-winded question, but he asked the question basically about the priority of the organization. And Adam Vingan texted me and he said, what did you think of Chase's question and Barry's response to it? And I said, I'm not sure that I completely understood the question and the answer. So that's where I'm going to start with Trotz is, hey, you know, when it comes to this team, you know, is your priority what's going to happen in 2028, or is your priority what's going to happen in 2025? And he's got to pick one or the other. You know, again, you got to be fair. Got to pick one or the other. I'm looking through my notes. He says anyone's guess at 3 and 4. You know what I do find fascinating is we all know who 1 and 2 are going to be. And if they wanted to, they could trade up, you know, I don't think they could, but like they could mortgage the farm maybe to trade up to 2 if they really, 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 really wanted Michael Misa and the Seahawks and the Sharks didn't. They could, in theory, do that. But once you get past that, I think it's that, remember that loser's curve that we talked about that the Ravens really believe in, and when it comes to trading up, which is we're not going to trade up in the draft because the player that we're going to trade up to take is probably not the guy that you're going to take. And so we're better off sitting back and picking who we want to pick. And if we lose them, we lose them, but it's probably more likely that you're going to want somebody else than we're going to want. And that's when he said, hey, it's anyone's guess at 3 and 4. That's kind of what I felt, which was they probably who they want probably is not who the teams at 3 and 4 want. So again, factor that in there. And was asked about, hey, when it comes to the team staying on the path and try to get the thing back on the rails, my question is on the other side, what happens if that's not the case? So with that, we are joined now by the general manager of the Nashville Predators, Barry Trotz. First of all, we just listened to your entire press conference, Barry. So it's good to see you. Thanks for stopping by up here. But let me tell you something. I got questions.
Okay.
So I would, if I could, like to start here at the very, very top, which is, what is your number one priority? What is your number one priority when it comes to this? Is your number one priority the 2026 Predators? Or is it the 2028 Predators, the 2029 Predators? And I'm saying 26 is like the playoff season. Are you looking at this saying, hey, you know, our top priority is to put a team out there this year to go compete? Or is your priority, hey, let's build this thing up in the future?
Well, I can answer that pretty easily. My priority is right now. I want to get us back into a position where we're fighting for a playoff spot. That last year we didn't get in that position. I feel if we get off to a good start, we'll be in that position. If we get to the position where we get in the playoffs, I think we can add some things because we got lots of assets. We got kids coming, and we got draft choices, all that. So I'll continue to do that. But my priorities now, with the eyes to the future, that's not anything I haven't said in the past. But I want to get the winning feeling again back here in this organization. Last year was a tough year, so I want to get that joy back. That's priority number one.
Well, so I'll use an example here between the difference between the priority being right now and the priority being 2028. I saw a report from Greg Wyshynski about your former club, the Islanders, wanting to try to find a way to trade back to take James Hagan so that they can have their cake and eat it too. And I think I saw the report said something like, well, they also have an extra first round pick at like 24th overall. And I'm like, don't think that's going to get you up to number 5.
Yeah, no, it won't.
But if they called and they said, hey, we'll give you Matthew Barzal, we're tearing it down, we're going to put Barzal and Noah Dobson out there, then would you be amenable to trading the 5th pick for a Matthew Barzal, who in 2028, 2029 will be north of 30? But right now, is if you were looking to contend right now, would be exactly, I think, the kind of player you'd want to add.
Yeah, I think I had Matthew, but I think it's a little bit hypothetical, and I don't like to talk about other teams. But you get a top player at that 5th position, you can turn that player. He can take care of business now, and the fact that you could probably move him to get back in that position would be something like that. But I don't want to talk about any other players. It's a little hypothetical. Plus, it'll get me in a lot of trouble in the league. So, but no, if you get a top player for a top player, then you have to at least think about it.
Let me ask it like this then, without using other players from other teams. If you got offered a guy who is currently a 28, 29-year-old, high-priced first/second line center for the 5th overall pick, would you do that? Not McDavid, not a superstar, but a good-ish player.
I would have to consider it. I don't know if I would do it or not, honestly.
Because if the for instance, if the owner,
the name does matter and the fit does matter. So put me in hypotheticals. All I can say is I'd have to think about it.
Well, I just look at the situation and I'm always like, the owner kind of dictates the course that the team goes no matter what. I mean, as if the owner comes to you and says, Barry, I want to make the playoffs this year, you're fired. That, I believe, probably would change your outlook as to what you're going to try to do. And I'm not asking you if you've been given that kind of edict or not, but while we're there, maybe we can discuss it. But I just, I guess what I'm trying to get down is, you know, this number 5 pick, I'm just going to tell you, I think it's going to be Hagen's. And I think Hagen's is going to go back to BC. And so if you're trying to win now, you don't take Hagen's because you're trying to win today. Because if Hagen's goes back to BC, then you just made the 5th pick and you don't get to use it because the owner has said, I want to make the playoffs. And so I feel like the last couple of years, outside of when the team totally tore it down at the end of 23, it's kind of been, you know, 1 foot in now and 1 foot in the future. And I am wondering if you had to pick a lane between the future of Mullendijk and Wood and this 5th pick and Stiga and Surin, if you had to pick your priority being there versus getting this team better so that they can make the playoffs, which one would it be?
Well, I can say this hasn't changed. We talked about a blend, and it has a little bit of both in it. There's no question. There's no and when you say a defined lane, one or the other, it's the blend. And I'm telling you, it's the blend of the young kids, which are going to be the future, and the current players that are here now. And we've got good players. You can't tell me that we got Saros and you got Yossi and all the players that we have that we shouldn't be better than we are. We are. I just know we are. We've got a lot of guys that have a lot of pride, a lot of guys that got a little chip on their shoulder. I feel we're going to be a better hockey team, but they're going to also need the young guys. It's just part of it's reality of this group. As you get closer to the trade deadline, for instance, you know where your team is, and if we have a chance to do something in the playoffs, I'm going to help this hockey team. If we don't, same thing as last year. We're gonna collect assets. We're gonna move some people. That's just the reality of the business.
I don't want to live through last year again.
No, I don't either. And that's why the priority is now to get that joy back for me, because we're used to winning. We're at least being very competitive. And last year I felt we slipped too much. We tried to catch up. It became a hard year. Then we had injuries, and then I traded some people and put us in a position where hopefully we're going to pick third, but we didn't get that through the lottery.
Barry Trotz is with us. Has there been an edict from ownership about wanting to win this upcoming season, about, hey, we want to make the playoffs. Hey, we're putting it on you to have us at a certain competitive level for this upcoming season? What are those talks like?
Our talks are the plan for, next couple of years. What does it look like in the next couple of years? What are we trying to do right now? And I said, basically the same type of conversation. The plan hasn't changed. It just hasn't changed. We're being flexible. We're allowing our young guys to grow. We've had a good team in Milwaukee. We've drafted. We've got assets. The cupboards are more full than they've been in a while. This is a destination place, so we're not afraid to spend. But we're going to spend when it's the right free agents and the right time and the right fit. And also looking at, there's no sense at this point where we are. We did most of our damage in free agency last year, so we knew that we were not going to do much this year. If it's going to be a trade, it's going to be more of a trade for player or player for prospect plus a draft or something like that. Those type of trades are more interesting to me than anything right now.
Is there any sense that you want the guy you're picking fifth to be on the Nashville Predators next season?
I don't control that, but I would love to have the fifth pick on our team, but I also want to be a realist too. Depending on who we get, they're 18 years old. They're at different stages of their development, physically, mentally, all that. There's a couple of players that if they're available and we take, I would say that they have a good chance to start with us. I don't know if they would finish with us, to be quite honest, because you start a training camp and the level just goes up and up. There's a couple of players that might be even better players in the future, but they're not physically ready. So you wouldn't have them in that position. So we'll just see who we pick. And that's probably a better question after the draft than before the draft.
So I'm a big believer of what I call the duck theory. If something looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So when I saw today that Luke Richardson was being hired onto the staff, I went back and I was seeing if he and Andrew Burnett had ever overlapped anywhere, and it doesn't look like they have. It feels to me like you've really stuck your neck out there for Andrew Burnett over the last year. It does feel like every time you came on the show last year, we were talking about whether or not you were going to fire the coach.
Absolutely.
Which was not fun, by the way. But
it wasn't fun for me either.
You've again doubled down, tripled down. Is this Andrew Burnett insurance that, hey, if this team gets off to a rough start like they did last year, Burnett's out, Luke Richardson's in?
No, I wouldn't say that at all. I think I really assessed. I had identified Luke a while ago, quite honestly, as a potential person who I felt that not only has experience, but has good eyes, been in the league, been in different teams. But I also felt that if you played against Luke Richardson when you played, he was a hard guy to play against. He's got a great story. He's a wonderful man when you get to meet him. I know you will. And I just felt that just the energy, and after a year like last year, I needed a little change. I needed someone who wasn't fresh work, because Andrew's got a lot on his plate. I put a lot on his plate this summer. And I
Like
wanted,
what?
Just different things in terms of messaging, everything from projects on how teams are playing. Because that, to me, the part of being a coach that continues to grow is you see the trends in the league. Sometimes you can't see them because they're happening and you're in the fight. So there's a couple projects I had him do. He's done some projects with his group. But we talked about messaging, what went wrong, what went right, what we change. We got to fix our 5-on-5 game. Let's call it what it is. I believe in our special teams. But we got a lot of the defense that our 5-on-5 play sort of, I think, lost us last year, let us down. And I think that's where Luke can be a good, another good voice for Andrew. Plus, he wasn't with the group. He didn't live that. So he's going to bring a different energy in there. So that was the whole basis. And I had talked to Chicago a long time ago. Luke was up for a lot of different jobs. And, I wasn't able to talk to him until just a couple of days ago.
So when it comes to the coaching staff, the one thing that I believe in the NHL is you can be a really good coach and you can lose the room. And once you lose the room, you don't get it back. I mean, Paul Maurice retired in Winnipeg because he felt like they weren't listening to him anymore. And Paul Maurice has done a pretty good job in Florida. He's a great coach. With Burnett, when I heard the Marchessault comments and even these like really thinly veiled Stamkos comments on locker cleanout day, it felt to me like the coach was losing the room. From your standpoint, we know it didn't work last year. For whatever reason, it didn't work. But you sat down with all these guys and there were no cameras and microphones in there. And so they could be as blunt or honest with you as possible. What reassurances did you have that he didn't lose the room? Because if I know you well enough, I know that even if you like a coach, if he loses the room, he's got to go, right? Like that's just how hockey is.
I'm a big believer. Like once the players turn on you, they just turn on you, or they don't listen. So everybody I talk to, and especially your top players, because that moves the needle for you. They said, we like Andrew. We love Andrew, playing for Andrew. We had a rotten year, didn't go our way. And they said, if we just did this or this, I think we could come back and do a real good job. So it wasn't necessarily about the coach. It was about a little bit of themselves, a little bit of, the things that they can do within the, be it the system, the little things that they can do in terms of getting off to a better start so we can get and be more productive. And Andrew is an open book. The great thing about Andrew is that he listens. And it's coaches that don't listen, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose the room. But if you listen, I made a lot of mistakes as a coach, but it came from the heart. And players knew that, and they knew that I would listen. And I think that's a quality that Andrew has. And Andrew listened, and he's going to make some tweaks, and he's going to challenge some guys to play a little differently if they have to. But he's going to listen, which is a really good trait as a coach, because if you're stuck in your ways and it doesn't change, then you're gonna lose the room. And I don't believe he did that.
So I do want to hit on some of this draft stuff. Barry Trotz with us here on the program. So it sounds like you don't plan to pick number 5 next year in the draft. That this is kind of a one year thing, knock on wood. So if that's the case.
Well, I found out this year you don't have to be that as bad to pick one or 2 or 3. So,
but with that being said, the reason I set that up that way was because most people, when they're hired as a general manager, they come to a city that they've never lived in before, an organization they don't really know much about, and they're just kind of a mercenary doing the job. You have lived through the pain of not having the true number 1 center on the team. And I mean that with all due respect to Mike Fisher and all due respect to whomever. Because of that, do you have to take a center? Given I know you were asked that, and we were asked about Martone.
My preference would be. I think they're harder to come by. My preference would be for sure. But at the same time, as I said, a guy like Porter Martone is he's a pretty good player, and you don't want to make the mistake of losing a good player. We're going to spend the next couple of days just deliberating on that. Jeff Kelty and his staff have done a really good job. We've done the combine. We've done the all the meetings, even with the players. I feel that there's not much between, like I said, there's 3 and 8 probably. There's not a whole lot. It could be any mix, and depending on what team you're asking. So I prefer that, but it's not a necessary thing.
Did James Hagan's college season turn you off? Apparently, the reason he's been falling, Bob McKenzie ranked him before the year as the #1 prospect. Now we're seeing some mock drafts. He's at 8, he's at 9. And there's a thought that, and I heard what you said when asked about his size, saying like, hey, there's some really good small players in the NHL, but
absolutely.
Did his college season turn you off? Because apparently that's what has rubbed some teams the wrong way.
Well, I didn't see him. I saw him twice, maybe in college this year, maybe once. But I saw him at the World Championships, and he was good. He was really good. He had, I think, one game that I could say that was pretty average for him. But a lot of people will say, he was playing with 2 pretty good players. Well, if you're at his age and you're playing with 2 players like Leonard and Perreault, I mean, they're good players to make you look good, as a lot of people say, but you got to be a good player to play with them. So I'm on the other way with him. So, every year there's a guy that falls. I think last year it was Cole Eiserman, I think. He was a guy that was ranked #1. I think it's a little bit of a curse being ranked #1 if maybe you're not a generational talent. And those guys get picked to death. I mean, James Hagan is going to be a good player in this league. He is. And I think those players get the curse of when you're not necessarily a generational player, the scouts pick you apart to the point where you just start to fall a little bit. And I know he's a good player.
Am I wrong for thinking, Barry Trotz is with his Predators general manager, that some combination of that, whomever I'm about to mention, one of these guys is going to be on the Predators? James Hagans, Caleb Denoyer, Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien, Roger McQueen, Porter Martone. One of those guys, assuming that Misa and Schaefer go, one of those guys is going to be a Predator.
I would think so, yeah. I think that's a pretty good list.
So when it comes to deciding between what you really value the most, is it the high-end skill, even if it's in a smaller package? Is it the compete level of a Caleb Denoyer or a Brady Martin, which is a lot like Sam Bennett? People are comparing him to Sam Bennett. Is it the just raw size and talent, albeit with the medical question marks? Which of those matters the most to you?
Oh, wow. They all bring different packages. What matters most to me? I think the safest thing is always the compete, the drive. That's a really something that I don't think you find a National Hockey League player, unless they're ultra skilled, are going to make it in the National Hockey League for any length of time. So you're looking for a combination. They all have skill. Some guys have a little bit more. I mean, to me, the wild card in this whole 2 wild cards that you just mentioned is Roger McQueen. I mean, if you really look at him, he's 6'5.5". Teams are projecting him to could be a #1 center. There is some question on his back, but I think hopefully that's all been taken care of in terms of all the medical and all that.
Hopefully, shouldn't you have the answer to that right now?
I do have the answer to that. I know a lot of good things. I mean, in track, he's a sprinter. So he's got good genetic genes. If you're that big and you're running sprints, that you're a good athlete.
Have you ever met somebody that had a bad back before?
Yes.
I've never met somebody that's had a bad back. I only know people that have bad backs. I worry about backs.
I do too. And where there's studies on body type, different people have more constant back pain with certain body types, all that. So we're looking at all that. But to me, when you throw out all those names, one of them will probably be a Predator next year. And the 2 wild cards that to me is trying to get a gauge where they're going to go is a guy like Martone and McQueen.
I left out Frondell, so I guess you're not interested in him.
Well, Frondell's a good player.
But I didn't put him on the list.
Well, you just asked me the names. One of those guys will be on there.
I know. It's like, guess who? Right. And Frondell wasn't on the list. Barry Trotz is with us here on the program. I do wonder when it comes to the center position for next season, how likely is it that the guy playing center next to Steven Stamkos will A, not be Steven Stamkos, and B, will be somebody who is not in the organization as of today?
Well, I'm hoping it's a guy that's in the organization today. My goal is to have Stammer not play center this year. I just think he can play center, and we tried it there. I got to get him back. I feel for the best area for Stammer to be Steven Stamkos, to get him back on the wing. In a perfect world, it'd be Stammer playing with a guy like Svech, or he's got to maybe play with Hala right now, based on what we have on our roster, unless we are able to acquire another centerman.
So if it's somebody that's on the roster, does that make you think that it would be Svechkov with Stamkos? That you're ready for Svechkov to be a second-line center in the NHL?
I know it's a stretch. That's why a move like Hala is a light move. He's played with guys like Hughes and Bratt and Mercer, so I know he can do that. But my goal is to get Svechkov to the second position, be it at the start of the year, end of the year, or next year.
Barry Trotz with us here on the program. I was looking on defense, and I know on the left side, again, assuming that Yossi's okay and comes back and returns, Yossi, Shea, Lazan, all on the left side. That seems to make sense. What's going to happen on these right sides right here? And I know you always talk about Willsby and Delgazzo and Blankenberg and the guys that played last year, but there's Molendyke, there's Gibson, who are the high prospects. Are we going to see them up there? And you did a great job in the press conference. The question was asked about, are you going to fix the defense internally or externally? And you did a great job of not answering that question. I was very proud of you.
Yeah, well,
but I got to know, like, is it really going to be, Yossi and Justin Barron? Because I know you said Barron played better last year, but I don't know.
No, I think he will. I got to give the young man a chance. I think getting getting Lazan and maybe Yossi moving over to the right would be a possibility that we're looking at, and then finding a partner for Shea is sort of the goal. Get another right D. The whole league's looking for a right D. I moved some right D last year, but we also have some internal things that the Willsbys of the world, and you don't want to hear that, but. I think if we can just tweak one more right side D, then we'll be in good shape.
So I know I can't mention other players on other teams because they're under contract,
Correct.
But there's a guy in Rasmus Anderson, for instance, that is apparently looking for a trade out of Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to that, if you make that trade, it's probably going to cost you a first-round pick, one of the later first-round picks. And then on top of it, you're probably going to have to give him a contract. And I do wonder when it comes to that kind of right shot defenseman who's a solid player, are you willing to make that kind of commitment to get a right shot pair in here with Brady Shea? Or would you rather, sign an older guy at the end of this when it all shakes free? Would you rather try a Justin Barron who's a right shot defenseman out instead of committing to, again, a solid defenseman, but who's never going to compete for the Norris Trophy?
Yeah, I think right now, just from the asks that you get from some of these teams regarding some of these players, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us in certain situations. There's certain players that do. Right now, the thing that we're looking at is just finding someone who can be a really stabilizing guy. I like guys that hopefully have some size to them. I said we've got enough guys that are a little bit smaller. I'd like to add some size on the back end. But we're flexible. We have some cap space. We have some draft choices. Finding out where the term of, if you were to make a trade for a player who's a good player who's maybe in his last year from another team, finding out what they are asking for, because that may determine, if you can even do it in the future. that makes sense because you know, the next couple of years we have some guys that have no move clauses. Doesn't mean they can't be moved, but they do have control of that a little bit. At the same time, you can. I think we're going to fix it internally. You know, Yossi's 25, 30 minutes a night, 25 hopefully. Lazon's a good 20 plus if he gets back to the sort of where he was 2 years ago. Then our defense will look a lot different. Just with those two guys in our lineup, they really weren't there last year. So, you know, and then hopefully some improvement with the guys like Barron and Willsby. That I'm looking to add something on the right side, to be honest.
Okay, a couple more here. These are probably the more, you know, just the Barry Trotz
Softballs.
with us. Yes.
Okay.
When you first got here, you said on this show, you said, hey, fans, be patient with us.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to take some time. There may be some pain involved.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that because I viewed that as being honest with the fans. When it comes to the expectations for this upcoming season, what would you tell the fans the expectations for them should be?
Well, I think two things. A, let's look for Nashville to rebound, to be in that mix again. You know, in that sort of be in that playoff hunt. And you're going to see young players, a lot more young players as call-ups than you did in the past. You know, in the last couple of years, who have been the call-ups? Jankowski, good player, older, but he's not going to move the needle 5 years from now. You're going to see young guys. You're going to see Kemmel, who's still 20 years old, believe it or not. He seems like he's been around forever. Guys like Schaefer, you saw, you know, Weisblatt, the LaRues that we have in the organization. Those type of guys are going to get chances to play. So the combination of solid veteran stars like Stamkos and Marsh, so Yossi coming back and Lazon, and our team play being more consistent to give us a chance, because our team the year before didn't have near as much talent as we had this year, but played better as a 5-5 team, played better in almost every aspect except the power play and penalty kill. And it just flipped on us last year. So trying to get that balance and get that joy back in Smashville, that become a hard team to play against again.
And then I do wonder, if you are picking 5 next year in the draft, if this goes off the rails and this, do you expect to still be in this position? Do you feel like you're on the hot seat at all with how last year went, with all the money that was spent and the results that were had?
I'll be honest with you, I never feel like I'm on the hot seat. And it's just me.
You didn't feel like you were on the hot seat at the end there in Washington?
A little bit. Obviously, the expectations were we had gone two in a row. Yeah, that was probably the one time I felt like I was on the hot seat, and we won a cup, so I was off the hot seat. And then, you know, I think I'm at a point where in my career that I'm going to do what's best for the Nashville Predators, what's best for getting this organization in a position where they can continue to build a team that has good young players, a team that has the pipeline, a destination place, having the facilities, we got a great city, we got a great fan base, got great ownership, getting the facilities, up to date, and and this arena is going to have an overhaul, as you all know. This is a place where I want it set up for long-term success, and that's my only concern. And what ownership or management does with me, I have no concern. I don't get too wrapped up in that.
And then last one, how do you feel when the criticism got pointed last year in the direction of the coach and also in your direction, given the additions that were made and the money that was spent?
What was my reaction?
Yeah, like how do you feel about people pointing a finger and that finger being pointed at you?
It doesn't bother me. Point it all you want.
Well, I actually haven't pointed it, but I
no.
would say there are some things that have been done that I disagree with, and there are things that I agree with. And, you know, if I was the general manager, you wouldn't agree with what I did, but
no, I don't read a lot of that stuff.
But you listen to this show, right?
I listen to you once in a while. Yeah.
Oh. Well, that's good. Barry, good luck.
I'm usually on it. That's why.
No, that is true. You know what's crazy? You got 2 other first-round picks. We've talked almost nothing about those 2 first-round picks because
I thought you would be asking me about strategy.
Well, here's the thing. This is the way I feel about it. And by the way, I laughed because when you said, hey, I think there are a lot of teams that are trying to look to get up into the top 15 with extra picks, like that, the price is going to be too much. I think you're going to be sticking and picking at 23 and 26. But I do feel like there needs to be some conditioning around here of when a guy is picked. I looked at the Cup final this year. McDavid 2015, Draisaitl 2014, Barkov 2013, Ekblad 2014, Seth Jones 2013. I mean, that's 12 years ago. Those guys are in their prime now. But because in football, for instance, a guy gets picked and he plays right away and he's good right away.
Yeah.
There's like, hey, we need these guys to be good right now. And I just don't think it works like that in the NHL.
No, it doesn't. You have to be patient. You got to, that's why I want to blend. That's the whole thing is you can help the development of your top players with the blend. And when they can get to a point where they can be the next level guys, it's like there's some good players that, you get into that 22, 23, 24, you start to pop. You really do. And if you can help that along with good players, getting them NHL minutes, it really, really helps. And I always laugh too when they said, well, you gave up a first round pick. Well, yeah, sometimes that first round pick is the 32nd pick, and we're also picking 35. The first round pick is a good pick to have. You got to pick the right player, and you got to develop the right player, and you got to be patient with that player. And in this league, when you're not patient, you end up replacing a lot of those players with older players. And so you got to leave a little runway, and I've done that with us. Every call-up that we have is a young guy. We've got flexibility with a lot of guys that are in the last year of their contracts, so they're easier to move, if you will. But if they play really well, you can enhance them and put them on another deal. But they give you a lot of assets, so we just got to be really patient, and we've got to protect them as well. You just can't throw them to the wolves.
Barry Trotz, as always, good luck on Friday.
Thank you.
And again, I think it'll end up being James Hagan, so we'll see if that works out. Stillman and Company, we continue 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company here at Bridgestone Arena, live at the MGM Sports Lounge. We just had Barry Trotz on the program, and I will say this. I was expecting Barry Trotz to kind of say, hey, I want our fans to understand that while we want to win this upcoming season, our focus is really in the future. And he said the opposite of that. I mean, he said the exact opposite. So when I sit here and say, hey, you want to judge Trotz, judge him on Wood and Mullendijk and who they picked fifth and Cern and Stiga and give it time. That's not what he came on this show and said. But I'm just going to keep it real. That is what I thought, where I thought they were headed, and what he said are not the same things. And I am a little surprised by that. And I'm not going to say I'm disappointed by it, but well, now I'm going to hold it to that certain level of accountability. So let's hit some of your phones on this. Reed, do we need to take a break here, then hit some phones, then hit Trevor? How do we need to do this? Probably should discuss this off the air, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, we're good to the bottom here.
Okay, good.
No real break.
Okay. So our phone lines, of course, are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I was reading the YouTube chat as Trotz was on the program, and I will tell you, if I had had more time, I would have told him about the one guy that says, if Barry is actually listening to Jared, we're cooked. Well, clearly he's not listening to me because he took the goalie or he signed the goalie. And I told him last year, I said, don't sign the goalie. A couple of takeaways just from the interview itself. He said that Luke Richardson is not Andrew Burnett insurance. He also said that he's convinced after talking to the players that Andrew Burnett did not lose the room, and that if he thought Burnett had lost the room, he would have fired him because he understands once you lose the room, you can't get it back. He said that he does want somebody other than Steven Stamkos playing center next to Steven Stamkos, but then said that he hopes that it is somebody internal, which I don't necessarily like because that probably means it's going to be Fedor Svechkov, and I want a more skilled second-line center, a more proven second-line center next to Steven Stamkos than Fedor Svechkov, which now I'm kind of hoping, okay, well, if James Hagens doesn't go back to college, then maybe Hagens can be that guy, because in my mind, I see Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Marchessault on a line, and I see Stamkos, Hagens, if you draft him and he doesn't go back to college, but he's probably going to go back to college, Stamkos, Hagens, and Bunting together, and I just don't like Svechkov on that line. I just don't necessarily like it. I asked him about the hot seat talk. He said he doesn't pay attention to the hot seat, doesn't feel on the hot seat, those kind of things. So make of that what you will, but he didn't say like, hey, ownership has said, hey, we're in this for the long haul. It's, hey, they want to know what it's going to look like over the next couple of years, which isn't the same as, hey, we're committed to this long-term plan. 615-737-1025. Joey says, this is why I love you, Jared, asking the hard questions and the important ones. You can tell by Trotz's laugh that he knew what to expect by coming on. I'm just going to say this. Before we started having Barry Trotz on every week, so before they had that great run 2 years ago, and those interviews were a joy to do, before all that happened, I mean, the Predators knew what they were getting into. Like, they knew this wasn't going to be grab ass and happy hour. And I think we kind of get to the crux of what it is people want to know. Again, I gave Trotz every opportunity to say, hey, this is about the future. This is about the long term. And yes, we want to win now, but, and he didn't say that. And as I say, you know, when it comes to how somebody answers something, I mean, you can't answer a question for somebody. Barry Trotz has been answering questions for 30 years as a head coach and now GM. He's a big boy. He knows what he's saying. And so, I mean, he put it out there. He said it. You know, this wasn't the same as some of the things I've heard in the past, but this was pretty on there. Neil says the Preds are not taking Roger McQueen. Trotz was talking about the wild cards in the draft being Martone and McQueen. I'm going to tell you, just trying to read the tea leaves, I think they like Hagens. But then when he said that compete was the most important thing. Now, Hagens did play very well in the championship games at the World Juniors. And so maybe that's the compete he liked. But apparently with Denoyer and Brady Martin and O'Brien, they're kind of more the high-end competitors. I also saw The Athletic talk to all these prospects. And with the prospects that they talked to, they asked, who do you compare to? And Hagen said Jack Hughes, which I didn't necessarily like because I'm not a huge Jack Hughes fan. But I will say that that does seem like a self-aware opinion to compare himself to Jack Hughes. Caleb Denoye was asked, and Caleb Denoye is in the mix for the 3rd overall pick to Chicago, and Denoye was asked who he sees himself as, and he said Jonathan Taves. And I said, yeah, he's trying. Hey, Chicago, I think I'm like Jonathan Taves. That was the vibe I got from that. A bunch of people, by the way, when asked who they thought they were, these prospects compared themselves to Matthew Tkachuk. One texter says, the interview made it seem like they would prioritize being a middle-of-the-road team rather than being bad for a period of time and then really good, and that's scary. I don't think it's that as much as it is I think they can do both. Like, they think they can rebuild while they're competitive, and I just don't believe that. I think they have to pick a lane. They won't pick a lane. I'm sitting here saying, hey, pick a lane. I don't think they'll pick one. Or at least they won't pick one publicly, and I'm not going to try to pretend. Like, when it comes to, well, they said this, but they really mean, I don't do that. I do not do that. They said that they want to win now, so I think they want to win now. One texter says, Denoye or Martone, not sold on Higgins. I've never liked drafting college guys high. Yeah, well, I'd say that Cale Makar is a pretty good player. So I hear you. I'd rather take Misa. And Martone does put the puck in the back of the net, and that's how you win. But I think Higgins is the most skilled guy in the group. And Trotz said that he was not worried. You know, I asked him about, did Higgins' season in college bother you? Because a lot of people are knocking him down the pecking order based upon those seasons. And he basically said, I saw him at the World Juniors, and he played really well there. I personally think they like Higgins. He did say it was from the list of Higgins, Denoye, Martin, O'Brien, McQueen, and Martone, and that left off Frondell. So, Reed, do you think that's enough that we can say, hey, take Frondell off the list?
No, I think you just forgot to include him the first time.
That I forgot to include him?
He was
or
on
that
that-
Trotz wasn't really listening. And
No,
because could you imagine if Trotz had said, well, hold on, you forgot Anton Frondell? You know, then that would have been like a huge, oh, wow, you're really looking at Anton Frondell, right?
I think he was just going to say yes to anyone that you listed on there. You could have thrown my name in there. He'd be like, yeah, any of those guys could have been a Predator.
Higgins, Denoye, Martin, O'Brien, McQueen, Jared Stillman.
No, that would probably, put up his antennas. He's seen you try to skate.
Yeah, that's I will tell you, that is something. Okay, Trevor joins us next. I got some thoughts with Trevor. We'll do a little hockey breather there, and then we'll get back onto the Preds at 5 o'clock. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Trevor's next. Stillman and Company, live from Bridgestone Arena at the BetMGM Sports Lounge. 1025-1063 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds. That's right. You see their logo right there, center ice. Have you ever called a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC tech, and felt like they were trying to sell you something that you absolutely did not need? If a deal sounds too good to be true, like a $99 club membership or a $29 tune-up, that's because it is. The reality is they have to find something to fix so they can cover the cost for the discounted club memberships. Unlike the other guys, Hiller never offers deals designed to trick you or sell you something that you do not need. So you always hear me talking about Hiller. This is why. They are incredibly trustworthy. That's right. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, they take care of my home. So basically book online the same way I do at happyhiller.com. I do it right on my phone, happyhiller.com, boom, 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 done. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters, the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That's Hiller. Call the Hat Face Truck today. Stillman and Company. Hey, tune in to ESPN 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Sounds take on the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. Pregame at 5:50. First pitch at 6:05. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app or theGameNashville.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan. Presented by Twin Peaks and by Family Leisure. And let's give something away because I'm in a good mood right now. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you'll score a 4-pack of tickets to the FIFA Club World Cup match at Geodis Park on this Thursday night. So I was reading a story at Awful Announcing about the Cam Ward Tubi documentary, which I was actually surprised about that somebody wrote a story about it. And it's amazing because if I say something, it's, oh, Jared Stillman, he's a bad guy. Can you believe that he said that? But basically Tubi or Awful Announcing, they wrote that this is a big risk for Tubi and a big risk for Cam Ward as far as his docu-series is concerned. And so Trevor Maddich joins us now on the program, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, when it comes to Cam Ward, now that we know he's having a docu-series, this is going to run in September, so it's not like we're going to be picking apart the Cam Ward docu-series before camp. But to you, how much do you look at this and say, I think this could be a problem, this could be a distraction, and how much of it is just, hey, a guy's extracurricular activities and I need to mind my own business?
Yeah, I think that, Jared, it'll be a distraction if it's a distraction. And the people that'll know are the coaches and Cam's teammates. If he is not as fully locked in as he ought to be, if he misses something in practice or, heaven forbid, in the game that he should have gotten, but he wasn't quite focused enough, and he was focused on other things when he should have been focused on getting ready for the moment that he's got to play football, then his teammates and his coaches will know. But the thing is, there are a lot of guys that are able to deal with extracurricular stuff as long as they compartmentalize it and don't let it take away from what's going on with football. I think the biggest way that could be a distraction is if he performs poorly, if he loses the first couple of games, throws a bunch of interceptions, looks like Will Levis 2.0 from the first 2 games of the regular season last year, that's where the distraction could come. Because then social media is going to tear him apart. Talk radio is going to tear him apart. And everybody's going to point the finger at this, whether it's true or not. And how Cam is able to handle that mentally and still remain a leader of this team would be the thing that is the potentially greatest distraction. So I just want to throw out there, though, that he wouldn't be the only guy that would be distracted if he is. I mean, take a look at Kyler Murray, the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. He signed a mega contract a couple of years ago. And in that contract, there was a clause that I'd never seen before. I think most people have never seen before. It required him to spend a certain amount of time on the iPad studying the game plan at home every day. And it was only like an hour, something like that. It wasn't a long, long time. But the fact that they put that into his contract tells you that the Cardinals believed that Kyler Murray was too distracted by video games or wherever else he was doing to keep from doing due diligence on football. So these are the things that Cam Ward needs to avoid. And if things really hit the fan like they did last year with social media and talk radio and things like that, when Will Levis played poorly in the face of a media blitz with his commercials of mayonnaise and then mayonnaise flavored scented perfume, whatever the heck he had, these are the things that Cam Ward will find dangerous to him.
The Awful Announcing article says, quote, if you're going to do a docuseries on a rookie quarterback, wouldn't it serve his best interest to take a more humble approach? To capture the moments and images of the season, good or bad, organically would make for better TV. It might buy him some sympathy if he struggles. It might also make people love him more if he excels. Maybe Cam Ward becomes a success story. He'd better be for the sake of this docuseries. Do you think that for the sake of this docuseries, Cam Ward better be a success?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, because if he is a success, then the docuseries will be seen as it's prescient. It's something that is foretelling his success in the NFL by telling the story of his success from high school through to becoming the number 1 pick in the draft. And all that is really good. If he doesn't succeed in the NFL, then that becomes a lightning rod for all the criticism. But see, there could be a whole big ton of criticism. And if Cam Ward ignores it and stays focused, then that won't be a distraction for him, because it's not like he's going in to do reshoots and re-edits and all kinds of things during the season because the docuseries didn't pan out based on the comparison to how he's doing early in his NFL career. Those kinds of things aren't going to happen. So ultimately, whether or not this becomes a distraction to Cam is 100% up to Cam and his football character and his ability to focus. From a standpoint of everybody else, all the fans and everything else, this is either going to be a great triumph and they're going to really enjoy what a great quarterback they've got and what a great path he took to get here, or they are going to flip out and turn this into the absolute epitome of failure of brand building if Cam Ward either doesn't start or if he starts and performs poorly. So this is really, to me, more of a fan thing and a media thing, unless Cam Ward lets it into his head, and then it becomes a Titans thing.
Trevor, my dad got on my ass yesterday because he thought I was too hard on Brian Callahan. And I have to say this, I like Brian Callahan a lot. I think he's a really good guy. But other than that, I have been incredibly disappointed this offseason because I don't feel like there's any change in Callahan. And I don't feel like there's any major changes as far as the organization is concerned, other than there's somebody different picking the players. But as far as the person sending the message to the players, it's the same guy, and I feel like it's the same message. And last year, I thought Brian Callahan was filled full of excuses and optimism and really just reckless behavior as far as a coach is concerned. I didn't think he ever held anybody accountable last year, and I don't see him holding anybody accountable now. There was a tweet Jarvis Brownlee Jr. sent out over the weekend that he later deleted, calling out Anthony Richardson for his rap video, which I don't necessarily like Anthony Richardson doing either. But it set me off because I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how can Jarvis Brownlee Jr., of all people, how can he try to talk smack against a team he's never beaten in his NFL career? The Colts are 4-0 since they drafted Anthony Richardson against the Titans. And the fact that he thinks he can talk drives me up a wall. But I'm like, that's what you get when your number one leader is Jeffrey Simmons, who doesn't even show up for the offseason program, even though the coach says the offseason program is going to be transformative. Trevor, I just think Brian Callahan's not cut out to be coach. I haven't seen anything that makes me think he is. Am I being too hard on Callahan?
I think that you are taking a snapshot that is a reasonable snapshot. I think, though, that he's got a chance to be a good coach. He was not a good coach last year. And if I'm a player in that locker room, I see a coach that tried a whole bunch of different things and none of them worked. At quarterback, for example, he tried making Levis the guy. There was no quarterback competition. Mason Rudolph was never considered as having a chance to win the job. This was Will Levis's job, and that's it. And they did that so that Levis could then build his confidence and build his leadership position within the team. Well, he goes out there and struggles early, and coach keeps throwing him out there so he can develop him. And if I'm a player in that locker room, there comes a time when a guy is costing his games because he's making boneheaded decisions, not because he isn't good enough, but because he's making really dumb decisions and turning the ball over unnecessarily, those kinds of things, which is what Will Levis did the first two games, which cost them the first two games. And yet Will Levis is still going out there. And after a while, if I'm a player in that locker room, I'm thinking, well, goodness gracious, why am I busting my hump to try to get as good as I can be when the coach is sabotaging the team by putting a guy out there that can't play? At least he can't play yet. At least he can't play this month. Let's put it that way. Right. And so I think he might have lost the attention of some of the guys on the team that way. Then later in the season, he began publicly criticizing Levis. Instead of publicly making excuses for him, he was publicly criticizing him in ways that, as a 12-year NFL veteran, I rarely saw when I was playing a coach do to a starting quarterback. I mean, normally the coach will say nothing about him or find something to praise and then chew him out behind the scenes. But to go public like that, that kind of thing is kind of weird. So I'm a player in that locker room and I'm thinking, well, does the coach really have a plan for dealing with this quarterback, or is he just trying something and it fails and he's trying something else? So these are reasons that I think that you thinking like you do makes sense from a snapshot standpoint. But I think that Brian Callahan has a lot of success and history working with some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as an assistant coach. And I think he saw some very good head coaches, how they manage teams and things like that. And I think that that he'll grow as a head coach. But another thing that needs to happen to support him is that his assistant coaches need to see what he's good at now and edify those things for Brian Callahan. And they need to see what he's still missing from a leadership standpoint and from an accountability standpoint, and the ability to make the players not just respect him, but fear him and fear his wrath. And if he doesn't have those things organically now, then the assistant coaches need to fill in with their position groups doing those things that the head coach would normally do. Because remember, the job of the head coach is to create a culture, is to create the scenario within which everybody knows what's expected of them. And then, like you said, Jared, hold everybody accountable. I don't think those things were done well last year. And so it's up to the assistant coaches to help Brian Callahan fill in some of those gaps until he can grow as a head coach and grow them himself.
So I would agree with that, but he brought back pretty much the same coaching staff except for a new special teams coach. That's part of my disappointment in Callahan is I don't think Callahan holds anybody accountable, and I don't think he can put a foot up somebody's ass. And sometimes as a coach in the NFL, you got to put a foot up somebody's ass, and he can't do it.
Yeah. And Jared, let me say this, that, you know, there's a lot of talk all the time about, well, he's a player's coach. Well, they think that a player's coach is one the guys like playing for because he's a nice guy and he takes good care of them. That's not a player's coach. A player's coach to the guys in the locker room, like for me, a player's coach is the one that gets the most out of the guy on my left and the guy on my right, because I'm going to give the most. And if I'm not giving the most, I expect that coach to make sure that I am, and to put a boot up my backside so that we win, because ultimately a player's coach is not the guy that's easy and fun to play for. Ultimately, a player's coach is the guy that gets the best out of everyone and gets everybody pulling in the same direction as a team, because when you win, you tend to stay on the team. They don't tend to hire new coaches and GMs who bring in a whole new roster. When you win, you get re-signed and you get paid. That's what a player's coach is. So some of the most difficult coaches to play for that I've ever been around on college and in the NFL, I would consider a player's coach, because they got the best out of me, they got the best out of my teammates, and we maximized our potential even though it was hard. Look at Bo Schembechler at Michigan. You know, they've got a sign up in their football complex that says, "Those who remain will be champions." And while they played for Bo, a lot of his players back in the heyday of Michigan football hated him in the moment, but they loved him for what he expected of them, and they loved him for the team and the individual players that he developed them into, even though in the moment they hated it. And that, to me, is a player's coach.
Trevor Matich is with us on the program. More with Trevor on the other side, 615-737-1025. Trevor, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. We are live today at the BetMGM Sports Lounge here at Bridgestone Arena. The Predators have the 5th pick in the draft on Friday night. Predators general manager Barry Trotz stopped by to join us earlier today, and we started off on the expectations and the priorities for the upcoming season and the future of the team. We'll have more of our exclusive sit-down with Predators general manager Barry Trotz next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Welcome back to Stillman & Company from the BetMGM Sports Lounge here at Bridgestone Arena. Earlier today, we had the opportunity to catch up with Predators general manager Barry Trotz, and we continue with that conversation. That's it for us. We're out of here, Stillman & Company. We will see you all tomorrow at 2. This week's Nashville's best deal is Red's Hot Chicken. Red's Hot Chicken on West End is bringing the heat. Don't miss their hot chicken and waffles or the mac and cheese crunch wrap. Grab a $30 gift card now for only $15 while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. Trevor Maddich with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters, Trevor, Pete Thamel has come out and said that the decision on whether or not to expand the basketball tournaments for 2026 is expected to come in the next few weeks. The expansion would be to no more than 76 schools. The reason I bring that up is because now that baseball is over and conference media days have not yet started, this is where the kind of league drama starts to happen. The realignment, the college football playoff, the TV contracts. So I ask this to you as a college football expert. What do you expect to happen next in the world of college football? And do you think that we can sleep easy for the next 3 weeks until we get to conference media days? Or do you think it's going to be cataclysmic what we're going to see upcoming as far as conference realignment, the playoff, and the future of college sports is concerned?
Jared, I think that the main focus of conference media days, from a standpoint of their questions from the media, is going to be, what in the world are you going to do to implement the House agreement, which allows direct payments of players by schools? Right now, NIL allows for businesses and outside entities to pay players. In addition to that, now the House settlement, which is the resolution of a lawsuit, is allowing schools to pay a little over $20 million directly to players. And the question is, how in the world is that going to work without generating a million lawsuits? For example, I mean, if you're paying players directly, how are they not employees? Schools do not want players to be employees, because then they have to pay workman's comp, possibly going well into the future for injuries that linger after college football. They've got to pay their share of payroll taxes. There's all kinds of things that need to be done that, if the players are employees, will cost the schools a whole lot more money, and the biggest schools can afford it. But after the biggest schools, who's got $20 million plus extra workman's comp, plus extra to pay taxes and things like that they can take on top of what they're already spending and throw it in there to pay these players and compensate these players? And the answer to that is very few. And so how are they going to do that without getting sued by the players to make them employees? They're already being sued now by a group of female athletes who want a bigger share of the retroactive payments that go back several years from the House agreement to former players. Well, they want more. How are they not going to get sued by current female athletes from a Title IX standpoint? Because here's $20 million that these schools, a lot of the bigger ones, are going to be spending. Well, how is that going to get distributed? Football and men's basketball at most schools generate most of the revenue. So should that be given mostly to them, or does Title IX require an equitable distribution? In that case, what's the definition of equitable? And that may end up in court as well. I think you're going to find big issues with the transfer portal, because until that gets settled down and there are hard, fast rules that everybody can adhere to without being sued by the players for illegal restraint of trade, then you're going to have player movement that is so dramatic that you won't be able to build a roster from one year to the next. And so these are things that I think will be talked about a lot in the meetings, because the media will be curious about it. And I don't think there'll be a resolution of any of it until a whole bunch of lawsuits play out, and probably until Congress passes a law that establishes all these things in all 50 states. And so we're a long ways away from there being settled solutions when it comes to paying players, employing players, and player movement in college football.
Trevor Maddich with us on the program. I saw that CBS signed a deal with the Pac-12, with the new look Pac-12. I got to ask, does the Pac-12 still really exist here? I mean, what's going on? And where was CBS a couple of years ago? The games they have for the Big Ten stink. Nevada at Penn State, those games stink. Where was CBS a couple of years ago to save the old Pac-12, Trevor?
Well, that's part of the problem, that they didn't have a secure source of revenue from their media partners that was secure enough and high enough to keep teams on the West Coast to want to stay with a conference on the West Coast. And that's one of the reasons that, these schools that that went to the Big Ten, for example, they're getting or will be getting, depending on, which school it was, a massive amount of money. The most money of any conference in college football is the Big Ten. And my guess is that some of them had, are getting a full share at the beginning. Some of them won't get a full share for a while. Either way, down the road, they're all going to be getting a full share. And at least financially, they are in a good position. UCLA reportedly was $100 million in debt with their athletic department before they went to the Big Ten. Well, that whole Big Ten thing is going to end up paying that off and more. So, this is the problem, that they weren't able to generate enough reliable, dependable cash flow to keep those schools on the West Coast. And now the Pac-12 is sort of starting over again. I mean, it's good for them, I guess, that there really is, from a playoff standpoint, no such thing as a Power 5 conference anymore. Because the way things are now, the top 5 ranked conference champions get automatic bids. It doesn't matter if you're Power 5 or not Power 5. And so the Pac-12 has every bit as good a chance to get a team into the playoff in their automatic bid as anybody else. And they're adding, Washington State and Oregon State are the ones that are the holdovers. So nationally, that doesn't move the needle at all. They brought in solid programs from the Mountain West, like Utah State, San Diego State, Fresno State. They're talking about adding Texas State, which actually is would be a sneaky good move if they're able to pull it off to get to the 8th team to remain a football conference. But, they're just sort of starting from scratch. So they still exist, but they are no longer what their motto has been, their brand, the Conference of Champions, until they prove that they're now the Conference of Champions with this new lineup.
Trevor Maddich, as always, is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters. Trevor, great stuff. We will talk soon.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Maddich joining us on the program. I expect there to be a lot of drama around college sports for the rest of the summer. 615-737-1025. There was something that I was ranting and raving about for about the last month. And within the last 2 hours, I have changed my opinion. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 105 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are here at Bridgestone Arena, high atop the BetMGM Sports Lounge, as we had the opportunity to chat with Predators General Manager Barry Trotz earlier today. So I have been saying for I forget how long that I don't care how the Predators do this upcoming season. I don't care if they're really good, really bad. I mean, obviously I care. I mean, if they're bad, that's going to be, they're going to fire the coach. If they're really good, I'm going to get into it, of course. But that when it came to judging the organization and what path they were on, I go back to the waving of the white flag in 2023 when David Poile finally said, enough's enough. And he traded Nino Niederreiter. And then he traded Tanner Jeannot. And then he announced his retirement. And then he announced that Barry Trotz was going to be taking over. And then he traded Mikael Granlund. And then they traded Matthias Ekholm. And I said, hey, it's going to take a long time before these guys are ready. Like, it's going to be a process here. But I think we were all in favor, no more of these hanging on for Johansson and Duchesne seasons. Then they had that heater at the end of the 24 season. They made the playoffs. They signed they signed Marchessault, Shea, and Stamkos to go with Forsberg and Yossi and Saros, whom they re-signed, which I would not have done. And it was an unmitigated disaster last year. They didn't fire the coach. But I kept saying, hey, if you're going to judge Barry Trotz, you got to judge him off the guys he drafts, which would be Tanner Molendyk and Matthew Wood and Igor Surin and Teddy Stiga and whomever they used the 5th overall pick in the draft on Friday night. And then, hey, you got to give Trotz, I think Robbie Stanley said the average is 4.79 years. You got to give him 5 years. Figure out if these guys can play or not. Barry Trotz was on our show today, and I said at the start of the show, I need the Predators to pick a lane. What's the priority? Is it the 2028 playoffs or is it the 2026 playoffs? Here's what Barry Trotz said on our program.
I can answer that pretty easily. My priority is right now. I want to get us back into a position where we're fighting for a playoff spot. That last year we didn't get in that position. I feel if we get off to a good start, we'll be in that position. If we get to the position where we get in the playoffs, I think we can add some things because we got lots of assets. We got kids coming, and we got draft choices, all that. So I'll continue to do that. But my priorities now, with the eyes to the future, that's not anything I haven't said in the past. But I want to get that winning feeling again back here in this organization. Last year was a tough year, so I want to get that joy back. That's priority number one.
Okay, he said it. And because of that, I can no longer be saying, hey, this is going to take time. Hey, you got to be patient. Hey, you got to look at the guys Trotz has drafted. I can't say that anymore. He's telling you that's not his priority. His priority is to, quote unquote, get the winning feeling back, bring the joy back, bring the fun back. His priority is to win with this team this season. His priority is to try to make the playoffs this year. And as I said, whatever your priority is should change the way you operate. And this is where I think I run against what I think they're doing, which is if your priority is to win this season because you spent $100 million on Brady Shea and on Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, and you gave the goalie that huge contract, and so you got to win now. Number one, Andrew Brunette should not be the coach of this team. That's the first thing. Number two, all of a sudden, the weight on the prospects, that doesn't really seem to matter as much anymore. Because even though Trotz says they're going to bring those guys up, and hey, Kemmel's going to play this year, and Molendyke's going to play this year, and these guys are going to come up from Milwaukee, and they're going to play, and you cannot win by prioritizing playing guys from Milwaukee. And this is the rub. And Adam Vingan talks about this all the time. And Adam Vingan is right. You can't have it both ways. You can't on one hand say, my priority is to win this year. And at the same time say, I want Fedor Svechkov to be our second line center. We're going to try to get him up there to play with Steven Stamkos, even though I liked Svechkov's game last year. He's not ready to be a number 2 center in the NHL if he's ever going to be a number 2 center in the NHL. But you're going to put him on Steven Stamkos' line, which means if Svechkov's not that guy, you've now wasted another year of Stamkos. And as we learned last year when they tried it out with Tommy Novak, if you guess wrong and you don't get somebody to play that second line center spot, you can't just go crap one out of your ass. So, again, I can only ask somebody. So what is your priority? What are you going to do? What do you think? I can only ask. I can't answer for him. His answer was, I'm worried about the now. If you're worried about the now, then you should be trying to trade the 23rd or the 26th pick to get a top pair right shot defenseman. Because right now you got 3 left shot defensemen on your lines. You've got Yossi as your top pair defenseman. He's a left shot. You've got Brady Shea, who should be a top pair defenseman, but again, he's a left shot too. So he's got to be on the second pair. And Jeremy Lauzon, who is, by all accounts, probably a third pair defenseman anyways. Left shot, left shot, left shot. The problem is Tanner Mullendijk, who's the top prospect coming up the pipe, he's a left shot. So if you could, okay, well, we'll try to sneak him in here on the third pair with Lauzon and we'll have 2 left shots. Okay, fine. But don't run out Justin Barron. If you're trying to win this year, you will not put Justin Barron out there because Justin Barron ain't that good. You're not going to try these Milwaukee Scarbinis, Willsby and Delgazzo and Blankenberg that played okay for a crappy team last year. You're going to go get better players. That's if your priority is this season. You're going to go after Noah Dobson. You're supposed to go after Rasmus Anderson if you're trying to win now. So again, what I would have done is I would have said, make no mistake about it. We plan to be competitive this season, but our focus is building a cup contender with the young guys in our system that we have drafted and we're going to draft. And that takes time. Trotz wouldn't say that. Again, you cannot have it both ways. You cannot say, we're going to call up a bunch of young guys from Milwaukee who we think are going to be a part of the solution long term. And we're going to stick them in there and see how they go. And then expect to get the best out of Steven Stamkos. That's not how it works. So I've said, hey, if I own the team, the priorities of this organization would be 2028, 2029. And everybody would know it. I had the opportunity to ask Barry Trotz that today, and he didn't say that. And the priorities are different. If you're worried about 29 as opposed to 26, they're totally different. If I'm worried about 2028, I'm not prioritizing the need to get a number 1, number 2 center that can play right now so I can put Steven Stamkos on the wing. I'd like to get someone who could play center, but it's not imperative. If I'm trying to win today, I am going out there and looking at every nook and cranny as far as a number 2 center and a legitimate number 1, number 2 center is concerned. I'd be on the phone with the Boston Bruins talking about working out a deal trying to get Elias Lindholm, who's got 7 more years on his deal, because I'm trying to win today, and Elias Lindholm is a legitimate number 2 center, and they may trade him. If I'm worried about 2026, I'm talking to the Calgary Flames about Rasmus Anderson, who is a top pair right shot defenseman who can play with Roman Yossi. This is a fork in the road. These are 2 lanes. It's the little stuff like that, which is really big stuff because, the 23rd pick in a draft is not just some throwaway pick. But if I'm trying to win in 26, I'm trading the pick because by the time that 23rd pick in the draft is good, it'll be 28, 29. If I'm trying to win in 28 and 29, then I'm drafting and I am just crop dusting the draft, trying to get as many guys as possible and trying to build my team that way. Saying, hey, if we win this year, we win, but it's not the end of the world if we lose. It sounds like they're trying to have it both ways. And no matter what, you cannot have it both ways. And so 4 hours ago, I would have told you, hey, they're trying to build for 28, 29. But I asked them, and they said they were worried about right now. So that's what we judged them on. 615-737-1025 will hit your phones. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Okay, a couple more here. These are probably the more, just the Barry Trotz with us. Yes.
Okay.
When you first got here, you said on this show, you said, hey, fans, be patient with us.
Yeah.
This is going to take some time. There may be some pain involved.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that because I viewed that as being honest with the fans. When it comes to the expectations for this upcoming season, what would you tell the fans the expectations for them should be?
Well, I think two things. Let's look for Nashville to rebound, to be in that mix again. In that sort of be in that playoff hunt. And you're going to see young players, a lot more young players as call-ups than you did in the past. In the last couple of years, who have been the call-ups? Jankowski, good player, older, but he's not going to move the needle 5 years from now, you're going to see young guys. You're going to see Kemmel, who's still 20 years old, believe it or not. He seems like he's been around forever. Guys like Schaefer, you saw, Weisblatt, the LaRues that we have in the organization. Those type of guys are going to get chances to play. So that combination of solid veteran stars like Stamkos and Marshall, Yossi coming back, and Lazan, and our team play being more consistent to give us a chance, because our team the year before didn't have near as much talent as we had this year, but played better as a 5-and-5 team, played better in almost every aspect except the power play and penalty kill. And it just flipped on us last year. So trying to get that balance and get that joy back in Smashville, that become a hard team to play against again.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz on our show. We will have, if you missed that interview, we will have that coming up with Barry Trotz. Again, I mean, he's saying, hey, we want to be tough to play against. We want to, again, like, I need more of a, hey, we expect that this is going to be tough, but this temporary pain is going to be good long term. We expect to compete next year. Give me one or the other. Can't do it. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One text says, Barry Trotz is nothing more than David Poile 2.0. This franchise will never learn, and they'll never get to the next step. Until there is completely new blood running this operation, the Predators will be stuck in mediocrity, and it is time for real change. I mean, time for real change is like, you're going to fire him today and have somebody come in tomorrow and say, all right, we're going to blow the whole thing up. I don't think we're going to be seeing that. But I'm not convinced you're wrong. I'm not saying fire Trotz, but I'm saying I'm not convinced that this 1 foot in, 1 foot out approach, which I did think was a hallmark there towards the end of David Poile. At one point, David Poile was really going for it. He was really going for it and wheeling and dealing first round picks and the Kyle Turris trade and the stupid contract that they gave him, and then out with PK and in with Duchesne, and they fired Laviolette and they hired John Hines, and like they were going for it. But after that, it was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Well, we think Johansson and Duchesne can turn it around. And it feels right now, it's like, well, we think these guys can turn it around. Not if you stick Justin Barron out there. I know they hired Luke Richardson to coach the defense this year, and hopefully he'll do a better job because the defense last year was horrible. But not if you're sticking Barron out there. One texter says, the Predators need a Ryan McDonough type of defenseman to play with Yossi and a Luke Shin type of player to play with Molendyk to be a bodyguard for the young guy. Well, I think that's going to be Lazan. So I think Lazan and Molendyk are going to play together probably on the third pair. Now, I don't know if Molendyk's better off playing first pair minutes in Milwaukee than third pair minutes in the NHL. But I do think that bodyguard type is probably going to be Lazan. Now, he did say they may move Yossi over to the right side. I have said that if you want to stick Molendyk out there, I say put him on the top pair. He's the top prospect. He's supposed to be the guy. Move Yossi to the left, put Molendyk on the right side. Move Yossi to the right, put Molendyk on the left. I don't think they'll do that, though. One texter says, he just said we have the right people in formula. The ball just didn't bounce our way. Don't take that, Jared. I don't think I did take that, and he definitely didn't say the puck didn't bounce their way. I mean, I asked him straight up. I asked him, like, if you're picking fifth next year, do you think you'll still be the general manager? And what his ownership said to you, I asked him, do you think you're on the hot seat? I feel like I asked the real questions. Joey from Bellevue says, Jared, at this current state with the roster and the prospects, are you excited about the Predators' future? Call me Friday night. Call me Friday night after the three players they pick, many of whom, the 23 and 26, I probably don't know anything about, and I will have an answer for you. I am excited for Friday night. Speaking of Friday night, be sure to come on out here. We're live at Bridgestone Arena. Come on out to Bridgestone Arena for the Preds draft party. Smashville at the Nashville Predators 2025 NHL Draft. More details at theGameNashville.com/events. Catch 102.5 The Game's draft night in Smashville starting at 6 o'clock. Powered by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 429. Barry Trotz, if you missed it, we got the nuts and bolts of it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Welcome back to Stillman & Company from the BetMGM Sports Lounge here at Bridgestone Arena. Earlier today, we had the opportunity to catch up with Predators general manager Barry Trotz, and we continue with that conversation. Am I wrong for thinking that some combination of that, whomever I'm about to mention, one of these guys is going to be on the Predators? James Higgins, Caleb Denoyer, Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien, Roger McQueen, Porter Martone. One of those guys, assuming that Misa and Schaefer go, one of those guys is going to be a Predator.
I would think so, yeah. I think that's a pretty good list.
So when it comes to deciding between what you really value the most, is it the high-end skill, even if it's in a smaller package? Is it the compete level of a Caleb Denoyer or a Brady Martin, which is a lot like Sam Bennett? You know, people are comparing him to Sam Bennett. Is it the just raw size and talent, albeit with the medical question marks? Which of those matters the most to you?
Oh, wow. They all bring different packages. What matters most to me? I think the safest thing is always the compete, the drive. That's a really something that I don't think you find a National Hockey League player, unless they're ultra skilled, are going to make it in the National Hockey League for any length of time. So you're looking for a combination. They all have skill. Some guys have a little bit more. I mean, to me, the wild card in this whole two wild cards that you just mentioned is Roger McQueen. I mean, if you really look at him, he's 6'5.5". Teams are projecting him to could be a number one center. There is some question on his back, but I think hopefully that's all been taken care of in terms of all the medical and all that.
Hopefully, shouldn't you have the answer to that right now?
I do have the answer to that. I know a lot of good things. I mean, in track, he's a sprinter. So he's got good genetic genes. If you're that big and you're running sprints, that you're a good athlete.
Have you ever met somebody that had a bad back before?
Yes.
I've never met somebody that's had a bad back. I only know people that have bad backs. I worry about backs.
I do too. And with their studies on body type, different people have more constant back pain with certain body types, all that. So we're looking at all that. But to me, when you throw out all those names, one of them will probably be a Predator next year. And the two wild cards, to me, is trying to get a gauge where they're going to go is a guy like Martone and McQueen.
You know, I left out Frondell, so I guess you're not interested in him.
Well, Frondell's a good player,
but I didn't put him on the list.
Well, you just asked me the names. One of those guys will be on there.
I know. It's like, guess who? Right. And Frondell wasn't on the list. Barry Trotz is with us here on the program. I do wonder when it comes to the center position for next season, how likely is it that the guy playing center next to Steven Stamkos will A, not be Steven Stamkos, and B, will be somebody who is not in the organization as of today?
Well, I'm hoping it's a guy that's in the organization today. My goal is to have Stammer not play center this year. I just think he can play center, and we tried it there. I got to get him back. I feel for the best area for Stammer to be Steven Stamkos, to get him back on the wing. In a perfect world, it'd be Stammer playing with a guy like Svech, or he's got to maybe play with Hala right now, based on what we have on our roster, unless we are able to acquire another centerman.
So if it's somebody that's on the roster, does that make you think that it would be Svechkov with Stamkos? That you're ready for Svechkov to be a second-line center in the NHL?
I know it's a stretch. That's why a move like Hala is a light move. He's played with guys like Hughes and Bratt and Mercer. So I know he can do that. But my goal is to get Svechkov to the second position, be it at the start of the year, end of the year, or next year.
Barry Trotz with us here on the program. I was looking on defense, and I know on the left side, again, assuming that Yossi's okay and comes back and returns, Yossi, Shea, Lazan, all on the left side. that seems to make sense. What's going to happen on these right sides right here? And I know you always talk about Willsby and Delgado and Blankenberg and the guys that played last year, but there's Mollendijk. There's Mollendijk, there's Gibson, who are the high prospects. Are we going to see them up there? And you did a great job in the press conference. The question was asked about, are you going to fix the defense internally or externally? And you did a great job of not answering that question. I was very proud of you.
Yeah, well,
but I got to know, like, is it really going to be, Yossi and Justin Barron? Because I know you said Barron played better last year, but I don't know.
No, I think he will. I got to give the young man a chance. I think getting getting Lazan and maybe Yossi moving over to the right would be a possibility that we're looking at, and then finding a partner for Shea is sort of the goal. Get another right D. The whole league's looking for a right D. I moved some right D last year, but we also have some internal things that the Willsbys of the world, and you don't want to hear that, but. I think if we can just tweak one more right side D, then we'll be in good shape.
And then last one, how do you feel when the criticism got pointed last year in the direction of the coach and also in your direction, given the additions that were made and the money that was spent?
What was my reaction?
Yeah, like how do you feel about people pointing a finger and that finger being pointed at you?
It doesn't bother me. Point it all you want.
Well, I actually haven't pointed it, but I would say there are some things that have been done that I disagree with, and there are things that I agree with. And, if I was the general manager, you wouldn't agree with what I did, but
no, I don't read a lot of that stuff.
But you listen to this show, right?
I listen to you once in a while. Yeah.
Oh. Well, that's good. Barry, good luck.
I'm usually on it. That's why.
No, that is true. You know what's crazy? You got 2 other first-round picks. We've talked almost nothing about those 2 first-round picks because
I thought you would be asking me about strategy.
Well, here's the thing. This is the way I feel about it. And by the way, I laughed because when you said, hey, I think there are a lot of teams that are trying to look to get up into the top 15 with extra picks. Like that, the price is going to be too much. I think you're going to be sticking and picking at 23 and 26. But I do feel like there needs to be some conditioning around here of when a guy is picked. I looked at the Cup final this year. McDavid 2015, Draisaitl 2014, Barkov 2013, Ekblad 2014, Seth Jones 2013. I mean, that's 12 years ago. Those guys are in their prime now. But because in football, for instance, a guy gets picked and he plays right away and he's good right away.
Yeah.
There's like, hey, we need these guys to be good right now. And I just don't think it works like that in the NHL.
No, it doesn't. You have to be patient. You got to, that's why I want to blend. That's the whole thing is you can help the development of your top players with the blend. And when they can get to a point where they can be the next level guys, it's like there's some good players that, you get into that 22, 23, 24, you start to pop. You really do. And if you can help that along with good players, getting them NHL minutes, it really, really helps. And I always laugh too when they said, well, you gave up a first-round pick. Well, yeah, sometimes that first-round pick is the 32nd pick, and we're also picking 35. The first-round pick is a good pick to have. You got to pick the right player, and you got to develop the right player, and you got to be patient with that player. And in this league, when you're not patient, you end up replacing a lot of those players with older players. And so you got to leave a little runway, and I've done that with us. Every call-up that we have is a young guy. We've got flexibility with a lot of guys that are in the last year of their contracts, so they're easier to move, if you will. But if they play really well, you can enhance them and put them on another deal. But they give you a lot of assets, so we just got to be really patient, and we've got to protect them as well. You just can't throw them to the wolves.
Barry Trotz, as always, good luck on Friday.
Thank you.
And again, I think it'll end up being James Hagan, so we'll see if that works out. Stillman and Company, we continue 102.5, 106.3 The Game.